Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto Dragon King DxD Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. When people wake up to the sound of an alarm, most people have varying reactions of some kind but generally fall into one category or another. Some people are morning people, able to get up and start their day as easy as breathing. They love the morning and the sun that rises each morning with it, always in a chipper mood if unheeded by a problem of some kind. Some people could grunt and groan but get up nonetheless, neither cursing nor loving the light of life. And then you just had to people who just could not get up at all, period. They wanted nothing to do with the mornings and believed the best time to get up was around noon. Naruto Tachibana fell into none of these categories. When he woke up, he stared at the smooth orange ceiling, the light from the Earth's favorite star splaying across and highlighting it beautifully. He looked up at it as though he were numb, a feeling he had felt every morning for as long as he could remember. He would almost call it as familiar as meeting an old friend if he had enjoyed the feeling. To Naruto, it sickened him to no end, but he had long learned to ignore the feeling. It was during this usual morning occurrence that he ended up pondering something. Throughout his life there had been times when the young man had wondered if something were missing from his life, if there was something he were supposed to be doing differently that he was not doing already. It was something that he had come to ponder each and every morning to no avail. And when he did, he reached the same conclusion he did each of those other times. Everything is alright. There is nothing wrong with the world and everything is as it should be. It's just you and your imagination. And it was then he wondered if others his age had ever asked the same question to themselves that he did on a regular basis. Were he stupid enough, he probably would have already asked by now and more likely than not gotten strange looks in response. After all, what teenager thinks this way anyway? Most people his age went on with much of a care in the world with the exception of some school tests here and there. It was a fact that most adults that he knew always complained about whenever possible, about how his generation was too careless and not thoughtful enough of the ever-changing social climate. It was rather annoying of them to continue to point out continuously. It was usually with these thoughts running rampant in his mind that Naruto started his morning. Every morning it was the same thing over and over again for as long as he could remember. There had been no change in his usual morning routine, and some days he wished something strange would happen just to change it up a little bit. He wished that something odd would happen that would make his morning slightly more exciting and not so boring. However, ignoring his wish for a change once again, Naruto began his morning rituals. Naruto removed the sheets his mother had claimed were just so orange they're tacky and began his morning rituals. Walking over to the closet near his desk, Naruto pulled out the standard uniform of the school he attended and began the process of putting on the white-collared button-up shirt. After making everything was cuffed properly, he put on a black tie, his sign of protesting the ribbons they made the male student wear like they did the females. After pulling up his pants, he placed his favorite pair of aviator goggles on his head and threw his blazer over his shoulder, grabbing his bag as he walked out the door. As the young spiky-haired blonde got to the stairs, he took a waft of the sweet smell in the air and walked down. That smell in the air was fairly familiar to him. It meant his mother was making a Western-style breakfast today, something she did not do very often. Despite growing up in Japan, he had always enjoyed Western-styled food a little bit more than the traditional Japanese breakfast, and the few times his mother made it he could truly felt genuinely excited. As he entered the kitchen, he noticed his mother standing over the stove, her brown hair swaying back and forth as she moved her head back and forth to the tune she was humming. "Good morning, Mom," the blonde youth said brightly to her, pulling out a chair to sit at the table of their dining area. His mother, Hana Tachibana, a fair-looking woman in her early 40s, smiled at her son in response. "Good morning to you as well, dear," she responded, returning her attention to what she was making on the stove. "How are you this morning?" Anguished over the fact that you didn't tell me that you were going to be making pancakes this morning, he shouted in an attempt at feigned annoyance. It was a daily morning routine between his mother and him. His father, Norio, was usually up and gone by the time Naruto got up to go to school, so most mornings it was just him and his mother. Since he was little, they had always had a relationship where they could joke around, especially since most kids avoided him like the plague due to him looking like, as some have put it, a foreign American-looking Yakuza type with wicked-looking scars on his cheeks. That was said despite his high grades and his rather calm disposition in most cases, but, as his mother put it, people were always quick to believe in sensationalism. It was due to him having few friends that he could talk to that the sort of relationship they had developed. His mother, the kind woman she was always there beside him to help pick him back up after kids said all the mean things they did about him. Whenever he had a problem, he knew he could always talk about it with Mom, and if it weren't for the fact he already had a best friend, he would have given her the title. Dad always did jokingly call him a mama's boy. His mother, oblivious to his inner thoughts, giggled into her hand and did not even bother turning around as she addressed him. I wanted it to be a surprise. You are supposed to be finding out the scores from your last round of testing, aren't you? She flipped the pancake as she pulled out a plate, prepping it to put the pancake and the bacon she made on it. It's a good luck breakfast of sorts, you know. Naruto snorted, leaning back into the blazer that hung off the back of his chair. You know I don't need luck, he responded arrogantly with a small grin tugging on his lips. I'm near the top of my class. I bet you I aced it. His mother turned around sharply. Naruto Tachibana, get off your high horse, she admonished, shaking the spatula she held at him. Just because you get good grades usually do not expect to always get them. You worked hard to get where you are, but don't start acting arrogant now. Remember what your father has told you. Remember, it may not always seem like it, but there is always someone better, he groaned in response as he finished reciting his father's favorite phrase. Geez, can't you just let me do it for once? His mother smiled and stuck her tongue out at him through her smiling lips in a teasing gesture. Nope, she said brightly, eyes closed. I've got to keep my boy humble and honest. Yeah, keep me humble and honest while the food's burning, Naruto grunted in response, allowing a small smile as he watched his mother quickly turn around and start to comically trying to salvage the burning breakfast. She really did know how to brighten his mornings, even if it was unintentional. A little later, after finishing the half-burned breakfast his mother had put in front of him with a sheepish smile, Naruto quickly ran out the door due to running late and still having to meet up with his friend. He ran actually quite quickly, faster than most people would be able to, as he sped down the street. That was another thing about Naruto. Ever since he was young, Naruto had always had slightly better strength, speed, and overall agility than most people his age. In gym class he was quite easily able to keep up with people who trained on a daily basis. The school track coach had even once tried to recruit him under the banner of the team only to find out Naruto really was not all that interested in sports despite his abilities. Most people, like the ones who thought he was a foreign yakuza, just chalked it up to the supposed super-secret ninja yakuza training. He would always laugh at that one slightly regardless of the fact it made most people stay away from him more. Ah shit, I'm late, came a cry from one of the people who fell outside of the most. As Naruto ran past, he was quickly joined, albeit more slowly, by his best friend who was a rather thin young man with brown hair and brown eyes, his open uniform showing his red shirt swaying behind him slightly in the wind. When he noticed Naruto ahead of him, his eyes shot open in recognition. Yo, Naruto! Naruto smiled at his best friend. Late as well, I see, Issei? Issei's face gained an angry tick. Yeah, because I spent time waiting for you this morning, he shot back angrily as he continued to run. Where were you? You're never late, you blonde bastard. Naruto's sweat dropped as he ran, chuckling sheepishly. Yeah, well, Mom kind of screwed up breakfast again. It was then Issei's turn to sweat drop, his eyes set into a deadpan stare. Your mother wasn't paying attention again, was she? It may have come out as a question, but they both knew that Issei already knew the answer. While Naruto's mom was a great cook, if she didn't pay attention things tended to burn a lot worse than what would happen for the average cook. In fact, when they were kids, Naruto's mom was distracted making breakfast once and ended up accidentally lighting Naruto's father's hair on fire. To this day his father stayed as far away from his mom as possible when she was cooking. Well, to be fair, I did kind of distract her this morning. In reality, looking back on the situation, it was his own fault. Pushing that aside, Naruto arched his head back slightly to look at him as they ran, the school now visible in the distance. By the way, remember that exam scores for the midterm are being posted today. How do you think you did? He saw his friend's sour expression and sighed. Don't tell me you didn't study again. Well, to be fair, I was distracted, the brown-haired boy said boldly. You were staring at some poor girl's tits again, weren't you? The blonde asked, dreading the answer he already knew. Well, they were quite the pair if I do say so. Issei, Naruto groaned. What, they just looked so lonely with no one looking at them. I think they wanted to feel needed, desired if you will, and the safety of a pair of are more important than any stupid tests. Naruto almost tripped on that one, and if he hadn't already known Issei's habits when it came to his desire of the female flesh, then he probably would have actually tripped. Issei had been like this since they were around 10, when they had met a perverted man in the park who had explained to children about the joys of the female breast. At first the young blonde had kind of thought the man to be kind of crazy, the kind both his and Issei's mom had told both of them to stay away from. Looking back though, Naruto could see why Issei was the way he was. The old man was really freaking persuasive. In fact, he probably would have been the same as Issei had he not asked his mother about it when he got home. It was kind of funny. After that event, they had not heard hid or hair of the old man who had told them about the joys of the one time he said something to his mother. She gave him a dark smile, and told him not to worry about crummy old men like that lousy son of a, trailing off slightly at the end as she mumbled to herself. He had never bothered asking her again. The young blonde sighed at his friend's obsession. You really need to stop obsessing, man, Naruto shouted to his friend as they finally reached the school gate, stopping to let Issei catch his breath and pant while holding his stomach. No girl is ever going to want to date you if you keep obsessing over their figure, he said as he ignored the looks they got from people walking into the academy. Issei glared at him, looking up as his breathing slowed. No way, he shouted the heavens for all the school to hear. I won't stop until I suffocate in them after becoming harem king. It's why I came to Ko in the first place. Naruto felt a drop of perspiration go down the back of his head even though he realized Issei did bring up a good point. Ko Academy, up until 3 years ago, was a famous all-girls school renowned for its high-class education and bringing up great female leaders, some of whom had gone on to become major company owners. Everyone in the area wanted to send their daughters there, and if it weren't for the fact that there were no student dorms, they probably would have had students from all across Japan come. A few years ago, however, the school board decided to begin admitting male students, ending the legacy of the once all-female school and turning it into something new. Of course, that did not mean it was immediately easy for students to get into. In fact, they still had a rather rough examination process that most students had to go through to get in. Naruto himself had decided he wanted to attend due to it being the closest school to his house, though the high-class education also did it too. Any other school would have been a longer trek for him to do and quite frankly not something he felt like dealing with unless absolutely necessary. Getting into the school was not as hard for him as it was for some others. The fact of the matter was that he was one of the smarter students in their grade already. He had really good grades to the point that even if he had not done all that well on the entrance, Ko had still said they would reserve a spot for him. It was a rather nice gesture, and something that was incredibly rare for a school to do for that matter. By the time the test came around, he had already known he was going to end up at Ko. Issei, on the other hand. Issei's getting into Ko was kind of lucky if you asked Naruto. At their last school, during their first year, he had met Matsuda and Motohama, two boys who had a level of perversion that actually equaled Issei's, which he had never thought possible. Together, even in middle school, they became known the menaces to female society known only as the perverted trio. Unfortunately, due to becoming such, with the exception of Motohama, Issei and Matsuda had effectively become the sum of the lowest scoring students in the school. When they had heard Ko was opening up their ranks to male students, they jumped to go there due to what would more likely than not be the high female to male ratio among students. So, in order to pick up their grades, Issei and Matsuda came to him to help them study to gain acceptance. Now Naruto would have done anything for Issei. When they were kids, he, their buddy Irina, and Naruto were best friends. They did everything together, and even when Irina left, he and Issei had remained best buddies. After all, despite his perverse nature, Issei was still a good friend to him, and whenever people had been rude to him, always helped him out. He would always have Naruto's respect and friendship. In fact, Naruto was really happy Issei wanted to go to Ko, even when he had heard the reason why. Even if it was only a minor role, he had decided he would help his friend achieve his dream while silently apologizing to the female population for what he was about to do. Helping Matsuda, on the other hand, was another matter entirely, and not something the blonde honestly felt keen on doing. Naruto did not really get along with Matsuda or Motohama. Unlike Issei, who was accepting of him, they had made fun of him for his lack of interest in the pleasures of the flesh since they had met him. It was different than the teasing he usually got about looking like a thug, but it still pissed him off to no end. Add to the fact they only furthered Issei's corruption with their own breast obsession, and Naruto just wanted him to get away from them. Unfortunately for him, Issei was for some reason really good at begging and managed to convince him to tutor Matsuda too. Naruto had to say that in the few weeks he tutored the two of them that they were truly dedicated to their studies. In fact, he would have to say that it was the most he had ever seen Issei study. He and Matsuda studied hard, getting together with him every day after school to go over notes and concepts, doing extra practice materials he had found of them online, and even going so far as to do flashcard reviews with him. He later was even more surprised to find out that they had sworn off porn just till they passed. He had never been more proud of his friend when he had found out that piece of information. And when that test finally came around, the two were thoroughly prepared. They managed to pass the tests and meet the requirements to get in. Naruto had been proud when he saw their scores, only to later regret what he had released on the world when the three perverts had started jumping up and down in excitement, shouting about how they were going to become harem kings. In that moment, he could feel all the women in the room glare at him simultaneously, and he had heard in some circles of female friends that he was not spoken fondly of. But despite Issei's proclamation about being the next harem king, Naruto could do nothing but chuckle at his friend's antics. You do realize, he began pointing out, that no women will ever want to be in a harem, right? There would just be too many different dynamics, clashes of personality, and so many other problems that would come up. You would never be able to attend to them all. Issei sighed at his friend, shaking his head in a manner as though he were trying to explain physics to a child. Naruto, my friend, you just do not understand. Harem is not just for the sake of adding women to some collection. No, a harem is formed by the love of a man with multiple women who love him and would be willing to live with one another just to be with him. They will love me like I do them and do anything to be with me, even except being in a harem. Issei grinned in satisfaction and pumped his fist in the air. And when they do, it will be glorious. The blonde's sweat dropped and would have commented on his friend's speech were it not for the sound of the bell beginning to ring. He sighed to himself. Come on, Mr. Harem King, we need to get to class. At that, the two friends ran into the school, not even noticing a pair of blue-green orbs staring at them as they made their way into the school. After school, Naruto Tachibana liked to nap. More specifically, Naruto Tachibana liked to nap in the afternoon under one of the larger trees outside school. It was his favorite thing to do in the afternoon after a long day's work at school. He found the shade of the tree to be quite comfortable, especially with the wind lightly blowing past as he laid on the cool grass. When Naruto first came here, due to his size and appearance, most clubs were not exactly willing to admit him due to the belief of him being some sort of yakuza. His height, which was taller than the average Japanese person at around 5'8", and overall appearance did not at all help matters with encouraging people that he was, in fact, a good guy. So with that in mind, after trying to join clubs a few different times, he just eventually gave up on trying. Eventually he found a routine he liked, and that was lying down under the shaded tree and taking a well-deserved afternoon nap, listening to the sounds of rustling trees and the sounds of student-athletes hard at work in the distant training area. Yup, there was nothing more he liked than his napping periods. Good afternoon, Tachibana-san. What he hated most, however, was when someone decided to interrupt that nap he was choosing to take. It happened every so often, and when it did, it usually ended up being the same person. The spiky-haired boy opened an eye slightly and stared at the admittedly beautiful forms of the student council president Sona Shirtorai and her vice president Tsubaki Shinra, who was also an admitted beauty in her own right. Sona, the shorter-haired girl with a bob cut and traditional black hair, gave him a small smile as she stared down at him. Sona, Tsubaki, the blonde grunted their names slightly, adjusting his body to another position now that they had woken him. Lovely to see you. His tone had been slightly sarcastic, but if either of them could tell, they didn't acknowledge it. And what can I do for you today, Madam President? I saw your test scores when they were posted, the black-haired girl stated bluntly. They were quite impressive. Top of the class, in fact. The girl adjusted her glasses slightly, the light from the sun reflecting off the surface as her violet eyes peered through. Congratulations. Naruto raised the brow of his slightly opened eye and looked straight at her small cool smile. It was rather odd, in fact. The young blonde and the student council president had a rather interesting first meeting. The fact of the matter was they had barely known acknowledged that the other had existed until an incident that had occurred during his freshman year at the academy. She was one of the more popular students in Ko, actually holding the title of being third most popular. She also just happened to be the student council president, in fact the first one to be elected during their second year, and was also one of the most popular girls in the school. Of course, with everybody thinking him to be a yakuza, he wasn't going to be known to them. With the exception of his grades, he was in the bottom of the food chain like Issei and the rest of his perverted cohort. However, it was towards middle of his freshman year when their first, if a bit odd, meeting had occurred. While he was walking around campus, he had met a black-haired young-looking girl. Two things about this girl stuck out about her. 1. She was jumping all over the place, and 2. She looked like a magical girl. It was so strange he had begun to wonder why people in the area were basically ignoring it. He had almost managed to ignore it too until she started causing trouble. It was in the midst of the chaos that Naruto had seen the young student council president run up with the rest of the council and try and calm the girl down. Unfortunately for them, the magical girl wannabe was not too keen on the idea of calming down and started shouting off stuff about Sotan, her apparent name for the president, being mean to her. It was in that moment Naruto thought too about two different courses of action he could take, which essentially ended up being that he could do nothing and save himself the trouble of having to deal with the lunatic girl, or he could do something to try and help, putting himself under much unwanted scrutiny again. The latter was something he would have preferred to avoid if at all possible. The idea of doing nothing though was taken off the table once he saw the fake magical girl literally knock out one of the student council members with her fake wand. In that moment Naruto decided it was time to do something. He walked up behind her and smacked her on the back of the head, almost mortifying Sona and her council, while the fake magical girl got all red-faced and stared at him as he calmly talked her down. Once he had managed to do so, he pulled out an ice cream, one that he had been saving in a lunch cooler for later, from his bag and offered to give it to her if she would calm down. A few minutes later, the kid was sitting down eating an ice cream while Sona and her counsel continued to stare at him in bewilderment, almost like he had literally punched out Cthulhu or something. It was just a little kid. She was harmless. Sona, finally snapping out of her bewilderment, said thank you to him and took the girl with her back to her office. The next time she saw him, she had struck up a conversation with him. Despite her outwardly cold demeanor, she was a rather nice individual, if a bit strict, once you talked to her. She was rather easy to have an academic conversation with, especially since her grades are basically the highest in their possible grade. Besides some of their conversations, however, the blonde did not know all that much else about the council president, which was what made it weirder whenever she talked to him. The president was well known for not really getting close with anyone unless they were people on the student council, and yet, despite the fact, she kept coming back to talk to the guy no one really wanted to be around. Pushing those thoughts aside, Naruto grinned at her while rubbing the back of his head slightly. Thank you, Sona, he said earnestly, ignoring the fact that most people would shriek over the fact that he referred to her with such familiarity and without the proper suffix. I really do appreciate the compliment. Naruto cocked his head to the side though to get a better look at them. Now, while I do not mind you visiting Sona, is there something you two need? You wouldn't come over just to congratulate me, Sona. I know. I've had my grades posted before and haven't gotten the kind of congratulations from you before, nor am I foolish enough to believe that you are here just for a social call. Naruto noticed a glint in her eye. It was the kind of glint that said all it needed to, one that would have him start running for the hills. Actually, Sona began, his stare becoming slightly more serious. I'm here to discuss with you the prospect of you possibly. Run away! Sona was interrupted by a shout from the field where some of the teams were practicing. The three turned to stare as three boys ran away, running so fast they were kicking up dust behind them. What ended up identifying the three, however, was the angry all-female kendo team chasing after them, wooden swords in hand. Well, it seems that Issei and his friends are up to their usual antics, sighed Sona as she rubbed her temple, turning back to Naruto to see him getting up and throwing his blazer and backpack over his shoulder. Where are you going, Tachibana-san? I haven't been able to finish. Listen, Sona, Naruto said, walking toward the action and using this as a way to escape whatever she was going to request from him. I'll listen to your request later. He sighed slightly. I got to go save Issei from getting the crap beaten out of him again. If I don't, I'll have to hear about it later with him saying stupid stuff like you were just too lazy to get off of your ass and save me or something similar. He cocked his head back at her and grinned. Besides, Miss President, you're going to have to calm those girls down anyway before they destroy the place. He waved to both Sona and Tsubaki as he ran to help his friend. See you later. Tachibana-san, shouted Tsubaki as she was about to run after him, only to have a hand placed in front of her by Sona. The tall black-haired girl looked to her side to see her master staring at the blonde-haired boy's back as he ran towards the action, a resigned expression on her face as she shook her head. Madam President. It's all right, Tsubaki, the girl said softly, continuing to watch him go. I can ask him to join later. But the reason you were asking now was because they have been sighted in the area, protested her assistant. If we keep letting him walk around without telling him anything about the danger, then he could. Tsubaki, her leader repeated her name sternly. Enough. I know enough about the danger that exists for him. It was bound to happen to him sooner or later. The vice president bit her lip slightly. To think someone who is completely ignorant to our world could have that much power within him, she said softly, a little bit of awe seeping into her voice. The fact that he had not been approached yet is surprising, finished Sona. Yes, I'm fully aware. But both Rias and I have kept an eye on him since he came on our radar his first year here. The amount of raw magical power he has should not be possible in a human without training and constant refinement in order to control it. Yet here he is, unknowing of anything about his potential. Observation has shown consistently that he knows nothing of our world, yet he still has that kind of monstrous power. If it weren't for the fact I've seen the data collected by the school on him, I would almost say there was no way he could be human. The two continued to look on as Naruto jumped into the fight to save his friend. With the perverted trio, there would be many days in his life where Issei was happy to say that he was a pervert. He could say he knew everything about the human body sexually. The fact he aced the health portion of his gym class could tell you that much. He could guess a female's size in various area almost as good as Motohama and was as lustful as Matsuda. Issei thought himself to be a connoisseur. He enjoyed all kinds of women of all different types. Short or tall, skinny or slightly chubbier, he didn't care. If they had a nice pair of on them, then he did not care. He was not discriminatory when it came to a beautiful pair. Yes, Issei was happy to be a pervert. Yes, most days Issei was indeed happy to be a pervert, that is to say, when he was not caught in the act. Right now, Issei was almost kicking himself for being a pervert. Issei Hayate had been ecstatic when Motohama and Matsuda told him they had found a new peeping spot to use, especially when they mentioned it lead to the changing room regularly used by the girls' kendo team. The team was actually considered to be the biggest single grouping of beautiful women that got together on a regular basis. Sure, there was girls' track and girls' tennis, but they did not have the following the girls of the kendo team did. Add to the fact that they would more likely than not be sweaty from practice, and that they would be changing as well. Issei had been salivating just thinking about it. Unfortunately, what the trio did not quite expect was for one of the girls to accidentally leave their equipment behind at the field. What they also did not expect was for her to hear the three of them giggling as they watched her teammates through the little hole in the wall. What they really did not expect was her sudden rage-filled battle cry of perverts, a bunch of startled girls, said girls running out of the changing room, and said group of girls moving to catch the group of perverts that had begun to head for the hills with their wooden practice swords to, more likely than not, beat the crap out of them. And so here they were, running for their lives from the bane of their existence, angry women who did not enjoy being peeped on. This was Matsuda and Motohama's fault, the brown-haired pervert thought, running as fast as his legs could carry him. They're the ones who supposedly found the nirvana of spots. Why do I have to suffer because of they couldn't check how obvious the spot would be? Issei wished he could escape. And, as if he had the god of perverts smiling down on him, Issei's request to escape came in his usual form of escape. So drawled someone from beside him and drawing the attention of the other two members of the trio. They saw Naruto running beside them, easily keeping up with them as his blazer fluttered in the wind behind him. You idiots seem to find yourselves in another bad situation. So what did you do this time? The blonde turned and looked behind them to see the angry group of girls chasing after them. What's up, ladies? He called out, much to the dread of the three perverts as his presence only seemed to antagonize them further. Tachibana, shouted one of the girls, Murayama he believed her name was. What are you doing here, you stupid Yakuza? Shouted the blonde as he began waving his fist at her. How many times do I have to tell you idiots I'm not a bloody Yakuza? I'm the highest test scorer in our year for Kami's sake. Stop calling me a damned Yakuza. As if we would believe you, shot back her friend Kates, the other girl leading the chase to take their heads from their shoulders. Besides, if you aren't, then why are you helping a bunch of perverted idiots like them? 'Cause one of them is my best friend, grumbled the boy as he turned his sights back to the fleeing trio keeping pace next to him. So what did you morons do this time? Steal some poor girl's underwear right off her body. He then pointedly stared at Motohama. Oh, Kami Motohama, please tell me you told some poor girl you're going to rape her in your imagination again. Oh, fuck you, Naruto, shouted Matsuda, who was pumping his arms and legs as quickly as possible, trying to keep up with the group. You're just as unlucky with girls as we are. Yeah, joined in Motohama as he jumped of a misplaced piece of fallen track equipment. You're in the same boat as us. In fact, why are you even running with us? You weren't there when we were looking through the peephole. Naruto just stared at them as he ran with them as they came toward the entrance of the school. You know, you actually make a good point, but I'm going to ignore the only smart thing I've ever heard come out of your mouth and help you instead. Oh, thank you, shouted Issei in joy, knowing if it was Naruto he might have a chance at escape. Oh fuck no, shouted the other two of the perverted trio. There is absolutely no way we're getting help from you, quickly added Motohama. You'll probably chalk it up to us owing you a life debt, or a similar system that you Yakuza believe in. Oh yeah, challenged the blonde. Then why didn't I tell Matsuda he owes me a favor or a life debt, or whatever when I helped him study for the entrance exams? 'Cause you know the only thing he's good for is ogling some girls, stated Issei while Matsuda squawked at the betrayal by his fellow pervert, and ignoring the fact that he too had the same problem. Regardless of Matsuda's shortcomings, began Motohama as he too ignored Matsuda's continued shouts of indignation, there is no way we're accepting help from a guy like you. The blonde just stared at him, his eyes scrunched up in annoyance. You know what, I was going to save you guys anyway when I was saving Issei, but now he ran in front of the two of them, noticing the horde of fit girls getting closer to them, and then swept his leg under them, knocking them over as he and Issei ran for the hills. Now you're the sacrificial tribute to keep them from burning mine and Issei's hides. As the two fell behind, he could hear the female rampage behind them disappear as he heard twin shouts of "fuck you, Naruto." This was followed by lots of crying with the sounds of various genitalia being squished echoed right behind him. Unlike how they wanted him to feel though, the blonde could only feel the sense of satisfaction. Issei stared at his friend as they ran past the school gates, his expression filled with some remorse. You know what, Naruto, normally I might have called you a traitor for allowing them to fall in battle in such a manner, he began before looking back at the beating his fellow perverts were receiving, But at this point I have to say better them than me. The foreign-looking blonde just grinned at his buddy and slapped him on the back. See, I knew you'd think so. Later. After the duo had made sure they escaped the wrath of the all-female kendo team, the two of them sat on a bench in the park, munching on some snacks they had bought from the local convenience store, and just talking the way they used to when it was just the two of them against the world. Before Issei had Matsuda and Motohama to hang out with too. When they were kids they had come to this park a lot to hang out and play games, even when no one else really wanted to play with them. Since Irina had moved away it would be just the two of them playing games, but to them it did not matter. Even if it was just them they always managed to have fun regardless of the situation. It was hanging with Issei like this that Naruto missed when they were kids. When school wasn't so complicated and they didn't have to worry about going to college and finding jobs soon, not that Issei was actually thinking about that anyway. He was too busy with trying to get a harem that Naruto even wondered if he thought about college and working, if he was too busy chasing his dream. But he supposed that was what he liked about Issei. He was always chasing his dream no matter how crazy it seemed. It was practically impossible to have a harem in this day and age, and the people who did were usually some form of royalty with a series of mistresses who more likely than not did not know about each other. Finding a situation where they did would require him to go even further back into history looking at the harems of various royal figures and whatnot. But hey, it was still a dream Issei chased and that made Naruto somewhat envious of him. At least he had one. Naruto on the other hand did not have one at this current moment. He had no dream to speak of, no desire that he wished to achieve to the point where there were times he wondered why he tried so hard to do as well as he did in school. He didn't even know what he wanted to do. He didn't even feel like there was something for him to do. He had no dream for the future, and that made him feel even more abnormal than other people already did. You used to have a dream you believed in, whispered a small voice in the back of his head, which he desperately attempted to ignore due to it rearing its ugly head every so often. Shut up, replied the blonde as he palmed his head in frustration, trying to ignore the voice that seemed to be attempting to coax a reaction. He, giggled another, sounding almost like a madman he had seen in one of those bad horror flicks. Come on kid, you know it's true. You used to have a dream and now you can't even remember what it was, the voice continued, taunting clear in its gargled voice. Poor baby. Shut up, he returned, a pained expression stretching across his face as he stared into the tan-colored palm of his hand. Just leave me alone. Oh, but we can't, Naruto, repeated the voice from before, its voice almost cruel and filled with a longing tone. After all. We're always with you, said a multitude of voices as one. Naruto, shouted a voice next to him, startling him out of his trance. He stared at Issei, whom was next to him looking at him with a worried expression. Naruto, are you okay there, buddy? You've been out of focus for about a few minutes now. Naruto let go of a breath he had not realized he was holding. Yeah, I'm sorry. Issei sighed as he kept looking at his friend. Is your schizophrenia acting up again? The blonde could only nod his head. They're getting worse too, he admitted. Lately they have been getting rather restless. Issei could sighed and patted Naruto on the back, having grown used to the problem by now. You need to relax, buddy. Have you been taking the pills? Yeah, but it seems they have adapted to them. They just show up at random, and without warning now. The blonde put his hands on his head. There are times where I don't know what to do anymore. Calm down, Naruto. Just relax. I'm here for you, so you got no need to worry. The great and powerful Issei-sama will support you no matter what. Thank you, Issei. I can always count on you, huh? The blonde chuckled to himself softly while the brown-haired boy grinned in excitement. Yup, he exclaimed, his grin almost splitting his face. You can count on me. He then threw an arm over Naruto's shoulder, pulling him close to his side and stretching his hand out toward the sky. Just stick with me and watch as I become harem king. If it were possible, his grin grew even wider as he shouted his plans to the heavens. You'll be my first loyal subject in my kingdom. And who knows, I, in all my wisdom, might seem fit to gift you with a harem all your own. The blonde snorted but decided to play along. And what would my duties happen to be, my liege? He asked playfully, and jabbed his friend lightly in the ribs to get perverted boy to let him go. Surely you would not gift me with a harem all my own for free? Of course I would, returned the boy, catching on. After all, if a king is not kind to his subjects, then what kind of king is he? He would happily give his first loyal subject a harem even if he was an asexual moron such as yourself. Oh yeah, the blonde cried in annoyance. Well, I would rather be asexual than some perverted bastard who has boobs on the brain every second of every day, and can't get anything else done because of it. You wanna go, Mr. Foreign Yakuza? Asked Issei, bringing his head forward and smacking his forehead against Naruto's own, annoyance rising in him. The blonde pushed back. Bring it on, king of perverts, he countered, smoke being released from his nostrils as he kept pushing forward into their stalemate. I think I can stand to knock you down a few pegs. All of a sudden, Naruto charged full force, knocking Issei over into the ground, playfully punching him all the way. Issei let out a grunt as he hit the ground and punched Naruto in the chest, knocking him over and into the ground. Issei jumped right on top of him and punched in the cheek, laughing all the way as he did so. Feel the power of my lust, bellowed the boy like a villain from a corny cartoon. As he was about to jump on top of the blonde, he was quickly mule-kicked in the chest, pushing him away. Naruto quickly scrambled his way onto all fours and bum-rushed him, knocking the boy over again. Standing, the tall blonde placed his foot on top of his fallen foe as he too adopted the laugh of a cartoon villain. Mohahaha, he cackled in delight. Your power of lust is no match for my sheer strength of awesomeness. Awesome my ass, his fallen opponent replied, gripping his subjugators and pulling him down, forcing his body into the grass next to his. They steadied their breathing as they stared at the skyline that slowly began to fade to orange. They were silent as they looked up at the beautiful dusky sky that they had been entranced by since they were kids, silent and ignorant of the world that continued on without ignoring whatever behests they may have made. All was silent until the same laughter they had made as kids echoed into the skies above. They did not care at that moment if onlookers were to stop and stare, taking them for fools. They did not care that about the time of day it was or how close it was to dark. They did not even care what time they would have finished. In that moment, Issei for once did not think about and buxom women. He did not think about becoming the harem king or even about actually finding a girlfriend. Gone were his usual thoughts. The same could be said of the worry-wart Naruto, who for once was not thinking about his future or the things that might have been missing in his life. He did not think about his problems, or even the voices he heard in his head. For this singular moment in time, Issei and Naruto were truly content with their lives. It would be the last time they ever would experience the feeling together. A week later, Naruto had experienced many things in his life that shocked him. He had been shocked when he found out that his friend Irina was moving away. He had been shocked when he had found out his best friend had become a pervert that he had only ever heard legends about. He had been shocked when he found out that he had a form of schizophrenia that had never even been heard of before. Those were typically the shocks that he could deal with. Issei, his perverted best friend, actually getting a girlfriend was one of the few shocks that did not fully compute with his brain and in fact, for the most part, fried the logical section of his mind. If you had asked Naruto before when he thought Issei would finally get a girlfriend, he would say probably after college, when his lusts would be satiated by other things occupying his mind. By then he would probably have realized that he actually was a fair-looking guy and that if he calmed down a bit women would be more receptive of him. After all, behind that crazed lust of his, he really was a kind and thoughtful individual who cared about the people close to him. No, Naruto was definitely sure that Issei would not have a girlfriend in his high school years. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on the outlook of the person looking through the viewing glass, it somehow seemed that his prediction of the future had once again been incorrect. Then again, whenever Naruto tried to predict the future involving Issei, he had always managed to find a way to surprise him. In fact, in quoting one of the games he and Issei played as a kid, they had managed to change evil always finds a way to perversion always finds a way. Kami knew Issei proved the fact continuously. When Naruto had first been told the brown-haired pervert had gotten a girlfriend, much like Matsuda and Motohama, in denial of the whole thing. In fact, it was the first time the three of them actually agreed on something, if only for different reasons. Matsuda and Motohama were mostly in denial because they did not want to believe that their fellow perv had, as they put it, betrayed them by getting a girlfriend. Naruto was in denial of the fact due to the overall idea that Issei had found a girl that could actually handle his perverse thought process. They were at first given evidence in the form of a photo of a black-haired girl, who was around their age and in a uniform from one of the local schools in town, smiling and standing next to the boy with a delightful-looking smile on her face. Motohama, being the smartest of the perverted trio, actually claimed that the picture was photoshopped, and were it not for the fact Naruto knew Issei couldn't work a photo editor for his life, then Naruto would have agreed. The shots kept on coming for the other two, however, when Issei's girlfriend, whom he now knew was named Yuma Amano, actually came to see Issei after school was let out. Needless to say, the two blew a gasket and now refused to even speak to Issei as of this moment. If anything, it kind of made Naruto happy those two idiots were leaving his friend alone for once. And so it came to the situation he was in now. After planning on going home for the day, Issei invited the blonde to join him and Yuma to go to a cafe with them. Of course, Naruto had originally wanted to decline, not really wanting to interrupt and be a third wheel, while Issei was spending time with his new girlfriend. Upon the brown-haired boy's insistence, however, He revealed that his girlfriend was really interested in meeting her new boyfriend's best friend due to all the stories he had shared about them when they were kids. Wanting to support Issei in his relationship, the blonde finally gave in and agreed to meet them at the cafe. Upon his arrival to the area, being a little bit later than he was supposed to be, he found his perverted friend laughing and smiling with the black-haired girl who had become the object of his affections. Upon walking closer, Naruto noticed more closely some of Yuma's features. She was without a doubt beautiful, almost ethereal even. Her long silky black hair cascaded down her back, going right down to her pelvic area. Her face was smooth and angular, without an ounce of baby fat on it as the bright violet gems she called eyes sparkled in delight. And her body that really explained why Issei accepted her invitation to become her boyfriend. She had the body of a model, her smooth, curvy figure showing clear through the tight school uniform that clung to her body to the point it even accentuated Issei's favorite part of the female body quite nicely. She was beautiful in every sense of the word. It put Naruto on edge. A girl like this was interested in Issei? He loved his best friend, but this was the type of girl that was typically out of both of their leagues. Yet here she was, sitting there next to Issei and laughing like a normal schoolgirl in love. It was suspicious and he did not like it. Finally deciding to take the plunge, he greeted the two as he walked up to their table. "Yo, Issei," Naruto said simply as he pulled out his chair and sat down, putting his blazer on the back of the chair. "Sorry I'm late," he apologized, looking toward his friend, "but I was needed after my last class by the teacher." That was a bold-faced lie, but he went with it. Issei just smiled at him in response. "It's alright," he replied. "You were only late by a few minutes and Yuma-chan and I haven't been here all that long." Naruto cocked his head toward the side, looking to see the beauty he had yet to have a conversation with until now. The girl who had wanted to meet him. He extended his hand toward her. "Hi. The name is Naruto. Tachibana Naruto. But you can just call me Naruto if you want. I don't do formalities, you know." The girl cocked a brow but smiled nonetheless, shaking his hand with her own. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto-san." Naruto's brow twitched in annoyance at the formality, causing her to giggle melodiously. "I've heard a lot about you from Issei-kun. I've also heard rumors about the famous foreign Yakuza of Kuo." Naruto's brow twitched twice while Issei broke out into full-blown laughter. "I must say the rumors about you do not do you justice." "Kami, damn it, have those idiots have been spreading rumors again," he groaned, palm meeting face as he rubbed his eyes in annoyance. "Don't worry about it, Naruto-san," she began placating. "Issei-kun has told me that those are all just misconceptions and that you really are a nice guy. I don't judge." "Yeah, Naruto," chimed in his friend. "Yuma-chan is really sweet. Trust me." Yuma playfully punched him in the arm. "Oh, stop it, you," she said, giggling lightly as Issei swung his arm around her. Naruto just stared at their interaction. Something was wrong here. The fact that they had only been dating for a week, without even going on a date he might add, and already being this familiar was incredibly strange. In Japan it was considered odd for this type of relationship to develop in a week, even if you were dating. Hell, in America it was weird for a relationship to develop this quickly, and Americans got into serious relationships like freaking lightning. Another thing he found disconcerting was the glint in her eye. It was barely noticeable unless you looked close, and even then she was good at hiding it, but he could almost see a thinly veiled line of contempt hidden behind those expressive eyes. It was the kind that spoke of someone who thought that they were speaking to someone who was below their station, a look he had seen on one too many kids who thought themselves kings due to their popularity in middle school and even at Ko. It was a look of someone who had questionable motives. And while it may have just have been the minor case of paranoia he received as part of his schizophrenia flaring up, but there was definitely something wrong with this girl in front of him. "Is he okay, Issei-kun?" he heard, breaking him out of his stupor and allowing him to see both Issei and Yuma looking at him with concerned looks, or at least Issei's look was full of concern. The black-haired girl's expression was more of curiosity, even interest, dare he say it. "I'm fine," he replied eagerly, hoping not to tip the girl off to his thoughts. "So, how did you meet Issei? I heard that you were the one who asked him out." He saw her eyes narrow slightly. "Smooth move, moron," one of his inner voices called out, this one gruffer than the two who had spoken to him previously a week before. "Oh, Kami, not now please," the blonde thought desperately. Now was not the time for the crazy voices in his head to speak up and cause him problems. He needed to hear what she was going to say. The girl slowly blushed, allowing Naruto to note how good of an actor she was due to the fact she could seemingly blush when she needed to. "Kaya," she cried cutely, her blushing seemingly adding to the image of a love-struck schoolgirl. "Naruto-san, didn't your mother ever tell you it's not nice to ask a girl a question like that?" Issei fell for the ruse, but Naruto could see her eyes narrow even more at him, studying him intently for reaction. She knows you're on to her now, a cruel-sounding voice chimed in from the back of his mind. You can feel it now, can't you? That churning feeling in your stomach, the feeling of dread filling the air. Your friend Issei is oblivious to it. You are obviously not. It was true. No one else in the cafe could feel it, but the air had suddenly gotten thicker, whether just directed at him, or whatever he did not know for sure. Maybe it was all in his head, just like the voices, but right now he felt almost as though he were having trouble breathing. As it was, he was having trouble keeping his breathing steady to try and not make a scene. Whoever this girl was, she was dangerous. Of course you realize that now, commented a different voice, this one not unkind but definitely sarcastic. She's going to try and kill you. You need to stay away from this chick. Yeah man, an energetic voice chimed in. There ain't nothing lucky about the situation you find yourself in, yeah. Maybe we can convince her to leave us alone, a timid voice suggested. Maybe she doesn't really want to fight. Oh please, cried another voice full of pride. This bitch wouldn't be throwing around such killing intent if she wanted to be pals. I say we squash her. Can the voices in my head please not have a conversation without me and act like I'm not here? Howled the dismayed blonde, shutting up the different voices in his head. Please just keep quiet. I'm trying to concentrate on what to do. Just let me think. The voices stopped abruptly, and did not chime in again as he continued to stare at the girl. He decided he would get nowhere unless he pushed the envelope more. Smiling sheepishly, he rubbed the back of his head. Ah, shucks, I'm sorry, he apologized. I didn't realize that was so personal for you. She smiled lightly, her eyes glinting. That's okay, you didn't know. So, if you don't mind me asking, what do you like about this crazed guy here? Hey, what's that supposed to mean? The brown-haired boy complained, pouting lightly. I am not crazed, says the boy who stole panties from the girls' locker room in middle school and refused to let them go even when they caught you, deadpanned his friend. Dude, I thought you said you would never mention that incident again. What happened to our agreement? Oh, sorry, he apologized, glancing out of the corner of his eye to see Yuma break her act for a second to scowl lightly in their direction. I kind of forgot about the agreement. She noticed his look and almost flawlessly reapplied her act, smiling at Issei lightly. It's okay, Issei, she soothed. I understand. A legacy of inept youth and crazy times, am I right? Seeing Issei quickly nod his head, she smiled cheerfully. Good. Then you promise to never do it again, right? At this, if it weren't for the fact that he thought Issei and himself were being targeted by this girl, he would have laughed at Issei's downcast expression as he seemingly almost contemplated giving up his desire to steal girls' underwear. It was almost picture-worthy when Issei's lip got appeared in a pushed-out manner, and his eyes watered slightly. Finally realizing if he didn't say yes he would be in trouble, the distraught boy nodded his head and causing the girl to nod cheerfully. Ha, she's got him so well trained after a week, laughed a deranged-sounding voice. Shut up, Naruto reminded, again silencing the voices in his head. Naruto outwardly smiled at the interaction, not wanting to let his internal thoughts out. So, is there something else you wanted to talk to me about, Yuma-san? She shook her head slightly, making a slight noise to herself. You know, Naruto-san, a girl is never going to like a guy that is so abrupt, she said, ending it with a slight mocking smile. It was a smile that made him feel fear for his and Issei's situation. It was the smile of a beast playing with their food. I actually asked you to come here because Issei mentioned that you were interested in games. Naruto was startled. The blonde did indeed like games. He played all kinds, in fact. While he would admit to playing some of the more mindless console games most kids his age played on occasion, he mostly liked games of chance and games of intelligence. He had no explanation for why he liked games of chance with the exception that he liked the risks he took when playing them. It was few times, due to his isolation, that he actually found some fun outside of reading a good book. There were usually a small set of guidelines that were followed by all, but the rest was left up to chance, and that was something he liked a lot. It made it somewhat more challenging. What he meant by games of intelligence was a game that challenged the mind, typically a player versus player type game like chess or some of its Asian equivalent shogi. He liked testing his skills and his know-how strategies, ones he typically made on the fly. It felt like whenever you played that kind of game with someone you were capable of telling what kind of person they were. It was a rather interesting feeling. Naruto, realizing he had yet to answer the question, simply stated, "Yes, I do." At that, her smile almost seemed to split her face, and it only further solidified that he wanted nothing to do with the woman. Well, my friends and I play a little bit of a role-playing type game, she said simply, casually stirring the coffee she had apparently bought before his arrival with a small stick. She pulled out the stick and sensuously licked it lightly. It's a little get-together with some of my friends that we have every week. What do you do exactly? Naruto asked, leaning in marginally as he awaited her response. This was it. Had his fears really been for nothing? Had it really just been paranoia that made him look at her so skeptically? Oh, it's kind of like a game of magic, she commented, almost offhandedly. Tell me, what do you know about mythology? A lot, he replied cautiously. Anything specific? Do you know about gods? She probed. Yes, I do, he said. Rather enjoy reading about the lore and some of the practices of the cultures who worship them. Well, in this game, all gods, no, all beings from mythology are real. Gods, demons, angels, dragons, and all other kinds of fantastical beings are real. Okay. And we are warriors who brave through the hardships of such a world where the beings exist. But in order to do so, we need weapons called sacred gears. Sounds exciting, interjected Issei, who seemed to really be getting into it. Issei, when he was a kid and before he had become boob-obsessed, was actually much like Naruto in his passion for mythology. When they were kids, in fact, one of the things they used to love to do was play games where they were heroes who fought demons, gods, you name it, and they had probably made a game where they had killed it together at least once. So even now, after so many years, Issei could still get excited about such games if possible. Yes, it is Issei-kun, replied Yuma, smiling in a joyous manner. You see, these weapons have different abilities and give users all sorts of different skills. It's rather a lot of fun. Naruto, for some reason, felt his gut churn at that. She seemed rather enthused about this game. A little too much so, in fact. He couldn't shake it. He knew that these paranoid feelings were wrong, but he couldn't shake them. So, with that in mind, I asked you here tonight so I could ask you both if you would like to join in our game, she asked happily. Issei grabbed her shoulder and turned her towards him, startling her slightly. That depends, Yuma-chan, he said, his expression deathly serious. Just answer me this. Yes, she asked, waiting with bated breath for his question. Do you guys cosplay? He asked, still completely serious. She looked unsure about how to answer it. Well, yes? And are the cosplay outfits skimpy in some areas? He asked, his urgent tone never wavering in the slightest despite how crazy the question was. No, yes, she again answered, testing the water slightly to see if it was leading in the direction she believed it would while Naruto face-palmed, already knowing that was exactly where it was heading. And do you have a lot of female members? He asked finally. Finally realizing where this was going, she answered confidently. Oh, absolutely. There is Akane-chan, Bilko-chan, Aki-chan, Chi-chan, Suzuki-chan. Naruto watched as his friend's face continued to flush as she listed off names of some of the females in the group, already knowing that she had found Issei's kryptonite, and was now just jamming it in further ensuring he would give in. After finally reaching 10 names, Issei flew back in his chair due to a noise bleed, a happy smile working its way across his face. Jumping up, Issei grabbed Yuma and began shaking her. Yes, he shouted. Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Where the hell do I sign up? Yuma smiled at Issei as she took his hands in hers. That's great, Issei-kun, she shouted back. I'm so happy you'll be joining us now. Issei fisted his chest. Of course, he replied confidently. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Oh, thank you, Issei-kun, she continued to think. You're the best boyfriend ever. After that she kissed his cheek, ensuring there would be no way for him to convince Issei to back out of it. He blushed as he scratched his cheek in happiness. Yuma then turned her sights toward him. And what about you, Naruto-san? Will you join us too? The blonde was at a loss for words. He honestly did not know what to do. His gut, the voices in his head, hell, his own perceptions were screaming at him that it would be a horrible idea. Even if it was his paranoia talking, it had kept him out of a lot of troublesome situations before. Hell, being overly cautious was something he would prefer at this point. This was the first time he had met Yuma, and quite frankly, even without the paranoia, he could tell there was something that was completely off about the girl. Behind that kindly-looking girl was an aura that screamed danger at his senses. But then there was the fact that it might just literally be all in his head. He did have bloody schizophrenia after all. Most, including himself, were known to over-exaggerate situations and turn them into things they weren't, and even though it was only a minor form, doctors only having been able to diagnose him with two symptoms, his auditory hallucinations and extreme case of paranoia. It was still enough to say it was a minor case of it, but it still drove him bonkers. All of those thoughts about something not being right about her, they could just be delusions he dreamed up. Listen to me, kid, stated a guttural-sounding voice, breaking him of his thoughts. There is something not right about this bimbo. Grab the pervert and get the fuck away from her. Listen to us, man, chirped the energetic voice. There is nothing lucky about hanging around this girl. She is about as unlucky as you can get. Listen to me because I know luck and she is all bad luck, man. Naruto, Issei called out, interrupting the voices. Can't you see she just wants to hang around with you and get to know you better? I would love it if my girlfriend and my best friend got on good terms with each other, you know. Issei, Naruto tried to speak but it came out a garbled mess. He didn't know what to do. Listen, brat, shouted the prideful voice. Get the fuck out of here. She is bad news. Her energy is fucking radiating ill intent. I know you just think we're voices in your head, but please just listen to us just this once, tried the timid voice diplomatically. Naruto held his head in pain as his thoughts jumbled about in his head. Issei walked toward his friend, grabbing him by the shoulder and leading him to an unoccupied corner of the room. Naruto, he asked in concern. Are they acting up again? The blonde nodded slowly. Come on, man, snap out of it. You've never had it this bad before. Issei, that's not the only thing, Naruto explained. There is something off about her, Yuma, I mean. What do you mean? Issei inquired. She's been nothing but nice to you. What is off about her? It's because every time I look into her eyes I see something I don't like. She is hiding something, Issei. What do you mean? Think about it. She comes out of the blue and asks you to be her boyfriend. Issei scratches his head slightly. Well, she said that she had been observing me for a while. She said about how she liked what she saw about me. My kind nature and stuff, you know. I know that and you know that, but you don't think it's suspicious she didn't try to be friends with you first or something like that? Other people do it all the time. Naruto let out a frustrated growl. And we are not other people, Issei. You're smarter than this for Kami's sake. She wants something from us. She has that glint in her eye. Naruto, you're just being paranoid again. Stop letting it rule you, damn it. She just wants to be your friend. Naruto startled, having lost whatever other words were about to reverberate from his throat. She just wanted to be his friend. She really just wanted to be his friend. Was that really the case? As it was, he really did not have many. When I told her about you, she thought that you sounded really cool, Issei stated fiercely to him, defending his girlfriend and her integrity. She even said she was envious that I had a friend as cool as you. You, Naruto. She said that you sounded cool just from a Kami-forsaken preliminary description. Hell, when I got into details about some of our adventures as kids, she giggled the entire time. She told me to ask you to come with us today so she could meet you, my best friend. When I told her you had said yes, she was so excited. She couldn't wait to meet the person who, and I quote, sounded really awesome. She wants to be your friend too. Not everyone is out there to get you or me, Naruto. There are plenty of people out there who are genuine, and she is one of them. I can feel it. Please join in and just give her a chance. I don't want you to not like each other. Naruto was at a loss for words. A small part of him, one he really did not even want to admit existed, always thought that Issei would drop him on a dime if a girl asked him to. He always said it wasn't likely to himself, but the thought still existed. Maybe that was why he had been so adverse to her. He thought she was going to take his only real friend away from him. That realization made him feel horrible. He bowed his head in submission, recognizing Issei had a point. I'm sorry, Issei, he apologized genuinely. I guess you're right, I really am being unreasonable. I'm sorry. His friend slapped him on the back, grinning slightly. Hey, that's fine, he stated. Look, just give it a try. Who knows, you and I might actually make a few friends. Naruto too put on a small grin. Hey, I think you're doing this to try and turn a bunch of cosplaying nerd girls into your ideal harem. Issei's grin grew. Yup, got it in one. It's the first step to becoming harem king. He poked Naruto in the chest. And remember, as my servant, you've got to assist me in my endeavor, you know? Naruto just chuckled. Yes, harem king-sama. I, your faithful attendant, shall help you create the promised land. Issei howled in delight. Yeah, that's the spirit. Come on, we gotta tell Yuma you're joining us. He dragged his friend back toward their table, where Yuma had just finished getting off the phone. Hey Yuma-chan. Guess what? Naruto said that he would join the game too, so sign us both up. Yuma looked really happy when she heard that. Really? She asked, tone excited. That's wonderful. Everyone will be so happy we have 2 new players joining us. She picked up her bag from under the table. Come on, one of my friends is outside to give us a lift to the meeting. Issei looked surprised as he went and grabbed his bag too. Wow, that was quick, he said, running toward the cafe door in a hurry before shouting back at them. Come on, we'll be late if you guys keep moving at the pace you are right now. I'm coming, Issei, complained Naruto with a smile. Just hold your horses, you damn perv. After grabbing his back and blazer of the back of the chair, he walked toward Yuma. Hey Yuma? She looked toward him, her eyes curious. Thanks for the opportunity to do this. I'm really looking forward to it, you know. He looked down, eyes shadowed by his hair. And I'm sorry if I said or did anything that offended you. I'm not really good with new people. Yuma, instead of retorting or anything, just giggled. Hey, don't worry about it, she placated. It's fine, you know. I just know we're going to be great friends. Naruto looked up at her and smiled softly. Yeah, I would really like that. After their exchange, they both walked outside where there was an unmarked white van waiting for them. Inside was Issei, who was already buckled up with his head leaning back into the seat, eyes closed with a content smile on his face. Sitting behind him were two nondescript-looking men in priest-looking robes with sunglasses. He turned to look at Yuma. I suppose these guys are of the holy man class in the game or something? She looked at him, her small smile widening even more. Yup, she said, giggling to herself as she skipped to the front passenger seat and stepped in. Peering out the window, she stuck her tongue out at him. Come on, you slow poke. Issei is right. We'll be late if you take any longer. Naruto just sighed. Yeah, I'm coming. He walked to the open passenger door and jumped in, setting his bag down on the ground as the van door began to close. You realize you've made a horrible mistake, right? Asked the guttural voice, rearing its head once again. No, I haven't, he replied defiantly as the van door snapped shut. He heard some shifting in back of him, the priest character probably adjusting in his seat or something. He also heard a giggle from up front as he saw another man in priestly garb and the same sunglasses nod his head into the overhead mirror. He saw Yuma nod her head at something from the corner of the mirror. And then there was a sharp pain in his neck and he slumped forward, his sight and mind slowly going blank. The last thing he heard before it all went dark was the guttural voice telling him the most overused line to say that someone was right about something. I told you so. Waking up was a funny thing when coming out of being unconscious. The first few moments of being back among the living, you're disoriented. Thoughts like where are you or how long have I been out are typically the first questions that surge through your head. And then the memories of what happened begin to come back to you. Depending on if you passed out in a good situation, you may or may not be content with the memories of your previous endeavors before consciousness was lost. It was typically the scenario that most people would wish for if they learned they did pass out. Naruto Tachibana did not awaken to that kind of situation. No, upon his awakening to rustling sounds that he could hear but not see due to a thin layer of fabric around his eyes, the young blonde found that he could not move due to being strapped to something. That something he could not fully identify due to still being lethargic, but he did not need to even try to remember what had happened previously to know that he was not in a good situation unless Issei had somehow gotten them into a strip club that has a whole S&M theme, in which case he liked the situation even less. It would also explain why Issei got caught so often peeping at school. Secret masochist maybe? However, when the memories of his previous time of being awake resurfaced, he almost felt like kicking himself after he thought about it. The nondescript-looking white van, the generic-looking movie priests all packed into a car, the girl grinning to herself the entire trip to the van, these things hit him like a light once he remembered them. They basically screamed evil in some manner, and he ignored it because he wanted to make Issei happy. And now, if he had guessed right, they were probably in the worst kind of situation possible. He immediately, after adjusting to the sounds of the room, could make out chanting that almost sounded like an archaic form of Latin. Rustling sounds could be heard, and the floor of the room he was in screeched as something was being dragged across what sounded like stone. The screeching stopped, and there were a few bumps as something broadcast the sound of being dragged up something wooden. And then it appeared it was his turn as the structure he was hanging on was tilted downward and also slowly began the process of being dragged across the room, most likely to the place they had brought the other object. The sounds of chanting and the shuffling of feet grew louder. The person dragging him also appeared to be struggling somewhat if the fact that he had slowed down were anything to go by. He eventually felt another tug, indicating that someone else had grabbed onto the item that confined him as the dragging continued. Speaking of his confinement, after finally gaining full awareness, he attempted to identify what he was being held up by. He attempted to move his arms and felt leather bindings press up against the smooth surface of his skin that should not have been exposed by his school shirt. He felt a chill run up his spine as he finally felt the cool air of where they were race across his skin. Were they outside? It did just become spring about a month and a half ago, so was it possible they were outside? Deciding the where wasn't as important as finding out what held him up, he also began to recognize how his body was being held up. Whatever he was attached to had him hung up with his legs seemingly stretched downwards and his arms being held up at a 90-degree interval. It almost seemed like he was being held up by a cross? They put him onto a cross? What were they going to do, crucify him? And then the realization came crashing down on him like a sack of bricks as they began pulling him up the stairs, the sudden thumps jumbling up his mind. He began to struggle. I have to get out, he thought to himself desperately. I need to get out of here and find Issei. Then we need to warn the cops about what is going on here because this is some serious stuff we've been dragged into. Well, a crude-sounding voice appeared from the back of his mind, almost slightly smug in tone. This appears to be a fine mess you've found yourself in, isn't it? Now is not the time for the crazy voices in my head to begin acting smug, you know that, Naruto thought desperately as he attempted to continue to struggle in his binds, the roughly cut leather leaving a sore on his arms as he rubbed his wrists against it. Then you should have listened to us and you wouldn't be in such an unlucky situation, you know, shot back the energetic-sounding voice, apparently deciding that it too would come out of the woodwork now if only to say I told you so. It almost sounded disappointed. Listen man, you're lucky to have our guidance. When we tell you something is not a good idea we mean it ain't a good idea, Saich? I think now is not the time to scold him, came from a rather passive voice, a voice he had been thankful up until now not to hear much from. We need to figure out a way to help him get out of here or we're all toast, aren't we? Indeed, agreed the voice filled with pride. We can drill the little idiot about the basics of why it is a good idea to listen to us later. For now we should focus on getting him out of here. And what are you guys going to do? Snappishly asked the still struggling blonde. In case you guys have forgotten, you are voices who are figments of my damned imagination. What are you going to do about me being tied up? Just trust us and give us a little bit of time, dear, the sensuous he heard every so often said to him. It will only take us a few minutes to prepare. Just hold out until then, okay? I'll await your assistance with bated breath, he thought sarcastically as the cross he was attached to finally came to a stop. As soon as they had stopped moving, he had stopped struggling. There was no point now that they had reached wherever they were dragging him to. They more likely than not had the spot surrounded anyway if they were in the situation he thought they were. Huh, he heard next to him, the voice sounding eerily familiar. Where am I? What's going on? Why can't I see? Issei, Naruto called out softly, ignoring all previous thoughts he had before just so he could know his friend was safe. Issei, is that you? Naruto, Issei cried. Naruto, do you know what's going on? Why the heck are we tied up? What the heck is going on? Is this a part of the game? If only, Naruto grumbled to himself. No, it's not, Issei. I think the only game we were playing was to see how long that girlfriend of yours could mess with our heads without us noticing. What do you mean, Naruto? Issei asked, sounding perturbed. Yuma wouldn't lie to us about something like this. Come on, man, I thought you said that you would give her a chance. Issei, if we're in the situation I believe we are, then whatever chance I had thought about giving Yuma went straight out the window and into the burning fire because I think she lied to us. My, said a voice with a deep baritone, stopping the two arguing boys deep in their tracks. It seems that one of these foolish children believes he has finally figured out the situation. To be honest though, Rainier, I thought the boy you were fooling around with would have figured out the situation by now. I know he was not the smarter of the two, but to be this dumb is something I don't think I have ever even seen before. It certainly is good for a laugh. Do not flatter the pervert, Donna, said the voice of Yuma Amano, the girl whom, if Naruto was right, had gotten them into this mess. Tachibana had figured out something was wrong beforehand. Just by looking at me he had figured out that I was acting. Though I must admit the pervert was good for something. He managed to convince Tachibana that I just wanted to be friends with him. It was when she began to laugh that Naruto knew he had been right. That light-hearted laugh of the kindly girl sitting at a cafe had been replaced with the maniacal laughter of something different, something evil, and something definitely not human. Well, it certainly was an entertaining spectacle to watch, said a soft voice near them. I must say, Rainier, you are good at playing the part of the innocent young schoolgirl. It certainly was a very well done performance. Another voice, almost sounding childish, giggled nearby. Yeah, you had them completely fooled. Naruto felt something poking his side, more likely than not the finger of the giggling girl. I feel kind of bad that we have to kill this one though. Unlike what the rest of those crazy fools at his school say, he is quite handsome. Naruto, if he were in a different situation, probably would have blushed at her praise of his looks. Being compared to a Yakuza, it was not like he got compliments often. In fact, he rarely did, even though Issei had claimed differently. I must agree, the soft voice belonging to the first female he couldn't identify said. He certainly is not bad to look at. He does look a little more American than Japanese though. He heard Issei growl beside him. You see, Naruto, I told you that women were attracted to you even if secretly, he heard his friend moan piteously. After all, you are Mr. Outwardly hated, but I have an inner crush on Guy. I can't believe you would betray me like this. We're supposed to be unpopular together, remember? What other kind of female exploits do you have that you haven't told me about? Naruto too groaned, but for a different reason than his friends. Issei, now is not the time or place for you to speculate on the possible love life, which I don't have by the way, that I may or may not be fucking keeping from you, he shouted angrily. For Kami's sake we are tied up to crosses for hell knows what reason and you're thinking with your now of all times. Issei sounded like he was about to retort but was cut off by the laughter of Yuma, her harsh laughter echoing throughout the chamber that they were in. She seemingly went on for a long time, her compatriots too having gone silent to more likely than not wait for her laughter to end. It almost felt like he had spent hours waiting in suspense for something to happen to them. Neither he nor Issei said a word that entire time, with the brown-haired boy listening to her laughter with emotions the blonde could not see or hear from his vantage. Naruto however decided to use that time to try and think of a way to get out. Unfortunately, when she finally finished, Naruto had still been no closer to think of a way to escape. He heard her giggle a few more times to herself and after finally stopping, she seemed almost dismissive of the entire situation. Thank you for the laugh Issei-kun, Naruto-san, she exclaimed, her tone full of mirth. I have not heard such pre-death banter in a long time and even if I had, yours will still take the cake. Thank you for entertaining me so. Unfortunately, she continued, the amusement in her voice lessening as she spoke, I grow tired of messing around with you. I have a tight schedule to keep and a report to make soon from my boss so I'm afraid we must cut to the chase. She snapped her finger suddenly, startling Naruto. Calawarner, Middlet, please remove their blindfolds. I want them to see just the kind of situation that they're in. Okie dokie Rainier, shouted the childish voice, her statement ringing in his ears due to her being so close to him. If he could have, he would have grabbed his head in pain and instead attempted to move around instead. The female to the side of him let out a childish sigh. Come on there, big guy, relax will you? He stopped for a second as she breathed in his ear. Actually, keep squirming. It makes me so much more, she let out a lust-filled moan and he felt something wet slide against his ear, excited when you squirm. Middlet, stop messing around, shouted Yuma. It doesn't take that long to undo a blindfold. As it is, Calawarner is already done with Issei and I, as amusing as it was the first time, I would rather not have him begin shouting again about how unfair life is and what not. If he does, then he won't stop until we finally kill him. Alright, complained the one called Middlet as she finally got to work pulling off his blindfold. Can I at least play with his corpse later? I heard that human rigor mortis lasts for quite a while, and in some of that weird human porn they say that a dead human with a boner can last quite a while. Naruto shuddered to himself. He knew what rigor mortis was. The stiffening of the muscles of the body after death. He didn't know if what she said about the penis thing was true, but if it was, then that left him with the creepy image of this girl raping his dead body, something he found utterly disgusting that she would even suggest. Just what kind of people were they dealing with that she would have such a sick mindset? I'll think about it, replied Yuma, only furthering Naruto's questioning of their rightness in the head. Finally, the thin piece of fabric came off, and he was exposed to the darkness of the room. Looking around the room they were in, he could tell they were in a basement of some kind if the lack of windows in the room was anything to identify with. There were also plenty of old candles set up too, wax dripping lining the entire stick of white. There was a little light in back of the room exposing a staircase as well. That's going to be our way out of this, he thought to himself and looked toward his side slightly to see Issei was on the same brown platform as him, rather close to one another. Looking at his friend, he could not help but ask the obvious question. Are you okay, Issei? Issei cocked his head to the side to look at him, his eyes full of an emotion he could not quite make out. Not to use the sarcasm that's usually reserved for you, but do I look okay to you, he asked. I mean, was it the whole being tied up thing that made you ask, or the look in my eye caused to me I don't feel fine at all? Naruto steadied himself, trying not to snap at him despite the situation. Calm down, Naruto placated him quietly. Just give me some time to think of something. Oh, Naruto-san, do you honestly think you can get out of here? The two boys turned and saw Yuma Amano, standing there with her arms crossed under her and a slightly sadistic smirk on her face. She was not alone either. Behind her was what seemed like a small gathering of men in priestly garb, their faces all masked behind sunglasses and an unexpressive visage. It was almost as though they were emotionless soldiers of some kind, all under her direct command and were willing to jump if she told them to. But they were not the strangest people standing close to her. No. That tittle went to the three people with large black bird-like wings that were standing on either side of her. The first one, and the only male of the seeming group leaders which allowed Naruto to identify him as the one called Donna, was a middle-aged looking man with smooth black hair and a pair of blue eyes sparkling with delight. His pale violet trench coat with a white ascot would make him stand out in the crowd as someone who would seem like a gentleman almost, and were it not for the arrogant look on his black fedora-topped head, he might have pulled it off. The second female of the group was the most buxom of the group. With wavy blue hair and stunning brown eyes, she was quite the beauty to behold. Add her state of dress, which was a trench coat top that showed a large amount of cleavage and a nice-looking short skirt, and if he were Issei he would probably drool at her mature appearance. And then there was the last female, who was also the shortest of the group it seemed. The light from the candle close by exposed her light blonde hair, blue eyes, and the beautiful almost mature-looking face that did not belong on the body of the Lolita type yet somehow still allowing it to work. The mature look ended there though with the seemingly styled gothic Lolita clothing that one would see in many different anime works. Overall the group seemed like an odd bunch, especially since the leader seemed to be a teenage girl who was still in high school. He didn't even take the wings into account as they had to have been freaking clip-ons or something despite how real they looked. Naruto sighed out loud. Well, Issei, congratulations, Naruto began, causing everyone in the room to look at him. You somehow managed to find a girl that was a secret sadist and get us both involved in a deranged cult that appears to want bloody virgin sacrifices. I admit I was not expecting them to be doing male sacrifices, meaning us, but you just had to get involved with the craziest of the crazy cults, didn't you? Wait, hold on, the shortest of the group, whom by her voice he could identify her as Middlet, spoke. You mean to tell us that you think we're some kind of stupid human cult? Naruto's eyes bore into those of his fellow blondes. You're telling me that despite the fact you got a legion of weird-looking priests behind you and that 3 of you are wearing giant black bird wings that you still think you're not a cult? Okay then, well what about the bloody obvious ancient Latin chanting, the dark location with the weird-looking candles, the sacrificial altar, and 2 virgins tied to crosses on said altar? Are you trying to tell me that the stereotypical cult isn't like that at all? Please, give me a fucking break. Any teen who's seen one of those half-baked detective dramas on television could identify that this was a cult because they all do at least one bloody episode with one. It's like a genre requirement. Yuma looked amused while Donna, who moved to stand next to her, just looked up at him. You know, now that I think about it he does have a point, he commented offhandedly, eliciting an outraged shout from Middlet. I mean, is this all necessary to perform the ritual? He waved his hands around in a showing motion. The blue-haired woman sighed and rubbed her forehead. Why is this even bothering you so much? She asked bluntly. You have never complained before. Donna pointed toward Naruto. Well, when you think about it, the human does make a fair point. The setup does seem like something out of one of those human crime shows. I just want to know if we need to do this or if some idiot managed to tip the humans off about how we do things. Yuma just turned and looked at him in annoyance. I can't believe you even just said that and am thus going to ignore it. She turned back to look at her too before looking at Naruto directly. And as for you, as funny as your deduction is Sherlock, it's wrong. We are not a cult nor are we killing you because you're virgins. Surprisingly, Issei chimed in at that point. But you're still going to kill us, aren't you? He prodded dryly. Naruto was actually surprised that Issei, despite his more likely than not physiological trauma right now, actually managed to fire that one off. Yuma nodded her head cheerfully. Of course, Issei-kun, she said happily, almost sounding pleased that he recognized the fact. Naruto would have face-palmed if he could. Of course she could say that so cheerfully, he grumbled. Why am I not surprised? But this was good. He could work with this situation. It seemed that while they were on a tight schedule, as Yuma put it, that they were still rather easily fooled into talking with them. All he and Issei had to do was prolong their lives by keeping them talking until he could come up with a plan to get them out. You two seem quite chatty despite the fact you know you're going to be dying soon, Middlet stated, looking at the two suspiciously. Why is that exactly, HM? Oh, well, I just want to get to know my killers in depth before they off me, you know, Naruto stated in a snarky tone. I mean, really, if you guys were in your waning minutes of life, wouldn't you want someone to talk to too? At this point Naruto winked his left eye slightly at Issei, who was observing him closely. Turning back to them fully and after making sure they hadn't noticed him signaling Issei, he continued. Besides, Yuma, I have a query that I would like to ask you if you would be willing to answer. Oh, she sounded, looking intrigued by what he wanted to ask. Please do. I guess I can give you that much before you die. Thank you, he thanked, his throat dry slightly as he tried to keep the situation stable. Why exactly are you doing this? What did Issei and I do or exhibit to make ourselves your targets to the lengths where you had to trick Issei like you did? Yuma smiled at him, almost as though she were a cat looking at a canary. Oh, is that all? She asked in amusement. Humph, and here I was hoping your last question would be something I hadn't heard before. Then again, I guess you wouldn't know anyway, would you? I was surprised when I found out none of the devils in the area had even picked either of you up yet, but I suppose I should be thankful that they weren't going to be such thorns in my side. Devils? Like the demons from the Bible type? Why the heck was she mentioning something from the Christian holy book? Were they a rival group or something? Yuma's smile widened at his confusion. Now I know what you're thinking. You're wondering why I mentioned devils, beings that were primarily creatures found in Christian texts, am I correct? Well, to be honest, it's like I said to you before, Naruto-san. All creatures and beings that humans consider to be mythological are actually real. That means that devils are real as well, including the 2 groups of Pillar House devils stationed here as well. What you were talking about before was in the context that it was a game, he pointed out in return, seemingly not getting what she meant. When we talked, you had said that in the game, all gods and creatures from mythology are real. What you were talking about was a bloody game, and in case you haven't noticed, you bloody psycho, most games do not tie people up, nor do they talk about fucking sacrificing them either. And who says it isn't a game? She replied casually. In ways, we are warriors and we are collecting items of great power to help us move against the devils and the angels as well as other groups. There are still great battles, enemies to conquer, troops to move. Who's to say that I lied when I said it was a game? In fact, in many ways, plenty of different parties treat it like it is. When devils reincarnate humans, they use the human game chess as an equivalent to discuss the worth of the individual being who is to be incarnated. Heck, I heard that Heaven was currently trying out a way to reincarnate people using playing cards, though apparently they have not had any success. So in many ways this is a game. Naruto scoffed lightly, though the feeling in the pit of his stomach told him that he should feel otherwise. Devils, angels, gods, she was expecting him to believe that they were real and that he was tied up for that reason? Who do you think that you're fooling? He asked, voicing his disbelief about the situation. You're telling me that devils and other beings like them are real and currently in town? What do you take Issei and I for, crazy? What's next? Are you going to tell me that those black wings on their backs are actually fake and that you're fallen angels straight out of the Book of Enoch? Yuma's smile widened to the point that he thought that it would most certainly split her face. My Naruto-san, you catch on rather quickly. At that, the 3 standing next to her slowly floated off the floor and into the air, causing Issei next to him to shout in surprise while Naruto could only stare on with wide eyes. The 3 in the air had identical smirks on their face as well, only further proving their enjoyment at the reveal. Fallen angels. Fallen angels, like the ones from the Bible, had kidnapped them. They were at the mercy of beings of mystical power, who were literally supposedly created by the biblical God himself. Just what the heck were they supposed to do now? Anything he may have thought of to escape could more likely than not be countered by one of the magical abilities they more likely than not had at their disposal. For the first time in the entire situation, Naruto did not believe they could escape. His skepticism about what she had been saying only a minute before had been disproved in only a few-second interval. The powers they more than likely held would only make their escape more impossible. They were only human after all. How could he and Issei escape beings with such incredible power and control over them? The fact that they had managed to gather so many priests to them as well only further spoke of their power difference from humans. How were they supposed to fight beings like that? I see you finally realize the situation you're in, cooed Yuma as though she were talking to a child. You understand now that there is no way that you can escape, don't you? She slowly walked up the stairs, a sway in her hips as though she were trying to attract attention, and made her way towards him. When she reached him, she traced her fingers along his jawline sensuously, trying to make him ache for her touch. She leaned up against him, mouth against his ear, and whispered to him. Do you not think I did not know what you were trying to do? You were not the first human to think they could try and keep me talking while they thought of how to escape. And when they thought they had a chance, when I indulged them to the same answer to the same question that you and every other prisoner ask, I let them flounder when they finally realized that they were dealing with creatures out of their league. She pulled back from him, staring into his now fully shocked orbs, enjoying the fact that he was trying to process the information she had just told him. She loved it when they finally realized they had no chance. It was so much fun. Leave him alone, Yuma, shouted Issei from the side, who was now forcefully trying to struggle against his bonds. Staring at him, she stopped playing with the blonde before her, and quickly moved toward Issei. Why are you doing this to us, Yuma-chan? Asked Issei pleadingly. You're human too, aren't you, so why are you helping them? She looked like she was about to respond but was beaten to the punch by Naruto, who was now glaring at the ground. Issei, don't you get it, he said angrily. She's not human. She's a fallen angel like they are. She just took that form to bait you and me. She dated you to get close to you and get you to trust her. After that she had you invite me to the cafe with both of you where she could lay the trap for us, knowing that I was too paranoid to trust her but that I would trust you. He finally just let go of the anger. She played you and I like fiddles, Issei. She knew what both you and I were looking for so she could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. She found out that you wanted a cute girlfriend, so she gave it to you. She found out my desire for normality, and to try and become more trusting. She used you to get to me, and then she used that relationship she had built with you throughout the week to gather more information about me so she could convince me her attempts to be friendly were genuine. Naruto breathed in deeply, letting the information sink in for Issei. Face it, buddy, she played us the entire time, and for the most part we were none the wiser. Issei just stared at Yuma, horror dawning on his features. Yuma-chan, he tried, his voice pleading. Please tell me it's not true. Tell me that Naruto doesn't know what he's talking about. Yuma's hair shadowed her face. Please, Yuma-chan, tell me that our time together meant nothing to you. Please don't tell me you're one of those guys up there, that you weren't just using us. Tears began to stream down his face. Please, Yuma-chan, tell me that the feelings that we had weren't fake. Naruto just watched Issei plead his heart out to the silent girl. He knew he wasn't wrong. Looking at the information now that it was all together, it just made sense. The facts lined up just fine, that much he knew. But a small part of him had hoped he was wrong. That maybe these fallen had done something to Yuma, and that she really wasn't one of them. Maybe she did love Issei like he did her. Maybe. He heard giggling, softly at first, but then it grew louder and louder until it became full-blown laughter. Yuma threw her head back, her laughs once again echoing throughout the chamber, and had he not known the situation was real, he probably would have mistaken her for an anime villainess. Her laughing grew as she was covered in a bright pink-like energy, as she began to change right in front of them. Her body was stripped of all of its clothing as she gained a new, more mature look, growing several inches taller than she had been previously. Her face gained a look of maturity, losing what had remained of her baby fat while her eyes darkened slightly. Her bust and hips grew a bit more while her stomach thinned out slightly more. A bit of a black sludge-like substance appeared in the air and covered her in boots with stiletto heels, forearm-length gloves, a thong, 2 shoulder guards with spikes on top, and a strap that surrounded her around the upper portions of her stomach. Finally, a pair of lavish black wings sprouted from her back, finishing off the ensemble and confirming his worst fears fully. The now new form of Yuma finished her laugh, which had now become mature after her voice had seemingly dropped an octave, as she slowly descended toward the prone form of Issei, who was staring at her with shock, awe, and for all he tried he could not stop a tiny amount of lust from appearing on his face. As she floated in front of him, Yuma cupped his cheek in her now gloved hands. Yuma-chan, Issei tried, desperately. She smiled at him, her smile taking on a seductive quality. Sorry, Issei-kun, she began, stating his name in a mocking tone. But your friend over there was right. I never have, and never will, love you. Naruto thought he could almost see his poor friend's heart shatter as the words left her mouth. He growled to himself, clenching his hands as tight as he could given the situation, and found himself growling almost audibly. Yuma could see his anger and sent a mocking smile his way. What's the matter, Naruto? She mocked once again, even dropping the sans suffix she had been previously adding to his name. Are you upset that I hurt the poor pervert's feelings? Do you want to come over here and punch the crap out of me? She waved her hand, and before he knew it, 4 small spears of light hit the bindings with pinpoint accuracy and cut right through them as though they were paper. Naruto felt himself fall and put his palm toward the ground, catching himself before he fell completely, and landing on all 4s. The blonde looked up at the women as she sent him a sadistic smile. Come on, big boy, she taunted while floating next to Issei, who stared at the ground with hollow eyes. You want to hurt me for breaking his heart? Then come and punch me. I dare you! No! Her eyes took a sadistic gleam. I insist! For the first time in as long as he could remember, Naruto did not care about the consequences of his actions. He did not feel like thinking about the possible outcomes of what he was going to do. He did not take time to think about a possible escape plan now that he was free. He did not think about anything else except for one thing that caused rage to fill his heart, mind, body, and soul. He was going to hurt her for causing his friend pain, and no one was going to stop him. Naruto, shouted the prideful voice from within his mind. What are you doing, boy? As much as I don't want to say this, now is not the time for action. It is the time to think smart. And with all due respect, Mr. Voice inside my head, this is not something I can forgive. I'm not going to let this bitch get away with what she is doing to us with what she did to Issei. The blonde clenched his hands, almost drawing blood. For the first time in my life, I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of overthinking every single goddamn thing. I'm going to punch this bitch in the face. The blonde rushed forward, pumping his legs as fast as he could. For everyone else it might have seemed like a few seconds in time, but for Naruto it felt like forever. 1,000 thoughts ran through his head a mile a minute. None of them were thoughts about the hopelessness of the situation. None of them were thoughts about how careless what he was about to do was. None of them were about how foolish that he was for his actions. No, the one thing that reverberated through his mind at that moment was to protect his friend from the mental harm and physical harm that was about to befall them. That was what drove him right now, and it was because of a memory of a time he could not remember, in a place where they stood taller than some buildings, with a person he could not quite remember. He was awoken from his sleeping state, groggy and still tired from his previous activities. He forgot what he had been doing at the time, or if it even really mattered. However, that soft, effeminate voice wakened him from his slumber, and he was kind of happy she had. Upon opening his eyes, he saw a stunning pair of brown eyes of a beautiful girl looking down at him with concern. Her smooth face was framed by the silky black locks that framed her face. Her lips were held in a firm frown of concern. It was at this moment that he had thought that he had met a beauty of ethereal proportions. He felt as though he could not have been happier. He slowly sat up and rubbed his eyes with his free hand, ignoring the hand with the kunai. Why did he have a kunai in his hands? For that matter, why was he wearing a full orange jumpsuit? His mother had never bought him one of those. The one time he had tried to convince her to buy him, the one he had seen in the store, she had said she would never let her boy wear such a hideous outfit. So where in hell had he gotten one? Who are you? He felt himself ask in a voice that was slightly a tone lighter than his own. He stared at the girl in her frilly-looking pink sleeveless kimono sitting down near him with a basket at her side. He had never met this girl before. Hell, he didn't even remember being in this forest. What the heck was going on? Heck, she did not answer but asked if he would be willing to assist her in picking up some herbs that she needed, which for some reason he felt his body jump up against its will and his voice promise her with assistance. What was going on? Around the age he was in this memory, seemingly 12, he was never this happy. He never sat there humming a tune of some kind while helping a stranger pick up herbs. He was always too scared to do anything to do something like that. The voices that talked to him all the time had always made him nervous to the point where only Issei and his parents could calm him down. He would never have been able to sit here doing something like this, yet here he was, in a forest he could not make out, with a person he never remembered meeting, with all sorts of other oddities that were out of character for him. Hey, he felt himself shout while picking up another herb. Hey! Have I picked enough of those herbs you wanted? He pulled out another one and threw it over to the girl, who caught it without even looking up in a surprising act of dexterity. Are these weeds and grasses really medicinal? Instead of answering his question once again, she said something different. I'm sorry to have imposed on you. He felt himself snort. That's some job you took on, girl. He paused momentarily as he picked up another herb. Harvesting all that this early in the morning. He thumbed toward the basket near her side that was already 3/4 of the way full. He felt himself agree with his past self. The girl truly did have a lot of herbs. It almost made him wonder what she was planning on doing with the stuff. She momentarily looked up and pouted at him. Look who's talking, she returned. What were you doing in the middle of nowhere at the crack of dawn? He felt his body tense as his voice shouted out, training. Training? He was training? Naruto had never trained a day in his life as far as he could remember, yet alone never get up at the crack of dawn to do so. Why the heck would he be training? The girl adopted a thoughtful look as she processed the information. After that, it seemed she stared at his forehead where he usually put his goggles. Really? She finally asked. That headband you're wearing, are you some kind of ninja? Naruto would have scoffed if he could. Ninja? There is no way that he was a ninja. While ninja probably did share his sense of paranoia, Naruto was never a ninja, of that much he was sure. That was freaking impossible. His younger self seemed to disagree with the sentiment, suddenly growing excited. Why? Do you really think I look like one? Really? Because I am. It was at this point that Naruto decided that his younger self was an idiot, and that this was all a dream of some kind. A ninja? Really? Of all the different things he could have thought was a memory, his mind had to create up a one where he was a ninja? Seriously? If he was a bloody ninja, then why the hell did he wear so much orange? Aren't ninjas supposed to be like super stealthy guys that wear all black and are not as loud as he was? But instead of denying the claim like most smart people would in this situation, the young woman looked at him almost amazed. Wow, she said in a voice akin to awe. That's incredible. He felt his younger self giggle. Personally, he found it unbelievable that the woman before him bought the idea that his younger-looking self was actually a ninja. The large amounts of orange should have pointed out otherwise, yet she believed it. She looked so much smarter than that. While she was looking back down at her work, the girl asked another question of him. What are you training for? Naruto found himself, despite his firm belief that this was a dream, wanted to know his younger self's reasoning as well. What was he training for? Of course he thought ninja would train, but why was his younger self doing so specifically? He felt a grin tug up on his young body's lips. To build up my strength. Well, that wasn't as good a reason as he was hoping for. Sure, being strong would probably be cool, but that was it? The girl seemed to humor him. But you look so strong and manly already. Nope. Wrong. His younger self apparently was a bit of a shouter. I need to be a lot stronger than this. The girl seemed hesitant to ask but forced herself to do so. But why? It was a fair question. It only seemed that his younger self wanted to become strong just for the sake of becoming strong. It almost as though seemed that there was no reasoning behind his thought process. His younger self just grinned and brought up his small fist toward his face as he felt the voice that was not his own again leave the body's mouth. To become top dog and in my hometown. What? Oh God. He really hoped his younger self wasn't talking about becoming a yakuza or something like that, because then that would just only prove those kids at school right. All the people who used to treat me like dirt will have to say he's the #1 ninja. And right at the moment, I kind of have to prove a point to a certain person I know. People treating him like dirt, huh? Naruto supposed he could relate to his young self's feelings somewhat with how the kids at school. They treated him rather nastily for his delinquent-looking appearance. The Japanese then again never did like it when someone was out of place. Like the rest of the school was to talk. For Kami's sake, what about people like that Rias Gremory chick or that Kiba Yudo guy? They had irregular hair colors too, yet they were the queen and prince of the school respectively. Maybe it was because of his slightly taller appearance, or the whisker-like scars he had on his cheeks that added to the look. For whatever the reason was, however, people treated him like dirt. Always calling him names and keeping away from him, all because they thought he was some member of the Japanese mob. It was so hurtful sometimes that he remembered back when he was younger that he would sometimes come home from school crying and his mother would have to calm him down. The only people who stood beside him were his parents, Issei, and usually his teachers, who recognized the situation was not all like it seemed. The girl gained a stern look. Are you doing this for the sake of that person, she began, or for your own satisfaction? What? His voice asked as he felt the muscles on his face freeze up in confusion. The girl just giggled at his confusion, sounding quite cute. His young self was not amused, however, and shouted out in indignation, what's so funny? Do you have anyone special in your life? She asked him softly. While his younger self seemed to be thinking about it, Naruto himself acknowledged that he did have special people in his life. His parents, who were always incredibly supportive of him, for one. The other two were Issei and Irina, the former more than the latter slightly due to him having to leave when the three of them were 9. But yes, he did have people in his life who he did consider precious. The girl continued, heedless of the confusion of his young self. When people are protecting something truly precious to them, they truly can become as strong as they must be. Naruto found himself at a loss for words, while his young self seemed to have the same reaction. This girl had just told him that to become strong, he needed to have people that he was willing to protect. That he would have to have people that he was more than not willing to lay his life on the line for. It made so much sense to him now. That was how you truly gained strength. Yes. The girl might have been on to something. She might have truly been on to something. After all, he was going to be delivering a punch to the face to the girl who had just hurt his best friend. Yes, he thought to himself as he felt like he had suddenly gained a new burst of speed. Looking at the widening eyes of Yuma, he could tell that he had, after all, it seemed she was surprised by the new burst of energy he had. Or maybe she was surprised by the strange energy that had seemed to be gathering in the fist that he had held back in his preparation to punch her. Whatever the energy was, though, he didn't give a shit. All he knew was that he was going to follow the ideal of that girl who said that he could only have strength if he protected the people close to him, and he was going to drive it into her face. I don't believe it, stated the cruel-sounding voice from within his mind, ever so softly it almost had made it past him. I just can't freaking believe it. He actually managed to remember that. Of all the things we've tried to slowly remind him of over the years, that's the thing he remembers? But the blonde did not get what the voice meant, nor at this point did he care. This ideal, for whatever reason, made sense to him. He could almost feel it did as more of the strange energy gathered in his fist, causing it to shine brightly like a shooting star in the night. He was going to hit that girl with it, and he was going to knock her flat on her ass. He reached the end of the platform and jumped at the girl who had once been Issei's loving girlfriend, ignoring the shocked look he received from his friend for doing so. He almost felt as though he was soaring through the air as he got closer to Yuma, who was staring at him in horror. Naruto growled at her. Wasn't expecting this, were you, bitch? He shouted out angrily as he threw his fist, and the energy that had apparently been stored in it, toward her. She suddenly gained a nasty look in her eyes. No, she replied softly. No, I wasn't. And just as he was about to hit her, she suddenly faded from view, shocking Naruto to his core as he felt a burst of air appear in back of him, and someone leaning in close behind him. But don't you dare think it is enough to actually hurt me, fool. He felt Yuma's foot lash out with an almost bone-shattering kick and sent him flying toward the large gathering of priests, who moved away from the scene as he impacted the ground hard. He flew face first into cold stone floor and began skidding across the ground at an unbelievable pace. His face was in pain and he could feel that skidding across the ground has opened new wounds on his head, blood splashing up against the floor as he slid. I need to stop sliding, he thought desperately, barely managing to notice that he was quickly approaching the wall at almost breakneck speeds. Forcing his body to ignore the pain, he quickly pushed his feet downwards and forced them against the ground. A screeching sound echoed throughout the room as the toe of his sneaker scraped against the floor, allowing him to slow down enough to force his hands on the ground to bring him to a full stop. Ignoring the fact that he was on all fours essentially, he rushed forward again, his sights still set of the smirking form of Yuma, floating in the air. "Yuma," he shouted, rushing forward once again and managing to get up mid-run. He drew on the same thoughts he had before, the same feelings of wanting to protect Issei, and cocked his fist back again. He could once again feel the unknown energy pull in his fist, once again beginning to glow brightly. Unfortunately, he had not noticed the priests, who had moved out of the way before, had now gathered on either side of him and were not too keen on letting him attack again. Two priests suddenly grabbed both his arms, holding on to him tightly as another one charged in with a glowing sword in hand, thrown forward in a stabbing motion. Knowing that if he was hit it was over, the blonde managed to duck, if barely, as the priest's sword stabbed the air between the two other men of the cloth holding his arms. Using the small amount of momentum he had gained from his run, Naruto managed to free the arm with the fist charged with energy and gave the sword priest an uppercut to the chin, causing his head to explode in a bright shower of gore as the pent-up energy released in one burst. Adrenaline still pumping, the boy who had never fought a day in his life performed a sweep kick, knocking the legs out from under the priests who had held his arms. Another set of priests came forward with swords of their own and swung at him all at once. Almost instinctually, the blonde pumped the mystic-like energy to his legs and jumped. It was almost as though he flew over the group of three. Landing, the blonde then again began running forward. He was getting close to Yuma again. All he needed to do was just make up that short. "I grow tired of this," said a soft female voice as the blue-haired woman appeared before him and delivered a quick punch to his solar plexus, causing him to fall down face first into the ground. Naruto once again tried to ignore the pain, pushing up with his hands to look directly up at the woman. What he saw scared him. In her hand was a shining spear. A spear of light. Her face held a grim look as she stabbed downward, piercing his left hand. The whiskered teen screamed out in pain as he felt the spear go straight through his palm with little to no resistance from the bone whatsoever. He could literally feel the intense heat of the spear burning his palm. He attempted to grab at the spear with his hand but was unable to as the busted woman brought down her foot on his right arm and then stabbed at it with another spear of light, intensifying his screams of agony. The blonde vaguely heard his friend shout his name in despair, but in that moment, he felt nothing and heard nothing because nothing else existed but pain. The bars of heat that pressed through the entirety of his hand felt as though burned his hands and sides. He was too scared to even attempt to pull them out as blood dripped down from his forehead and hit the searing bars, creating a soft hiss as the blood boiled and burned. "Thank you for that, Calwarner," said the voice of Yuma as he once again looked up to see her looking down on him from the air in disdain. The blue-haired woman, knowing that she was the Calwarner who had spoken previously, only nodded. Yuma continued to look at him. "Did you honestly think that you could have beaten us? Really?" "She is right," spoke Donna from the side. "While I must admit that your sudden awakening to your magical abilities for the first time was quite shocking, including the ability to use them, the fact is that even then you still would not have been able to win. The fact is that everyone in this room has lived at least once of your human lifetimes. We have more experience than you likely ever would gain had you lived. You had no chance." "Still," Yuma continued, picking up from where her cohort left off, "I must admit it was quite brave of you to try and fight. Most of the captives were too scared out of their wits to even try. You even managed to beat some of the priests, killed one too. That says a lot about your talent, and if I didn't have to kill you, I think Azazel-sama would have loved to get his hands on you." She sighed and shifted her hand faintly. "How unfortunate." Yuma slowly landed in front of Issei once again, standing right next to the cross that held the friend that was shouting his name. She cupped his chin lightly while he whimpered her name. "Yuma, please stop this," he tried pleading once again. "At least let Naruto go. He had nothing to do with this." Yuma scowled at him and punched him in the stomach, causing him to grunt in pain and Naruto to startle. "Oh, please just stop shouting that name. Yuma? 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 Heck, my name isn't even Yuma." She then began kicking him in the stomach. "It's Rainier. Can you say it with me now?" She began to kick him even harder. "Ray, another kick, Nair." As she finally finished kicking, Issei's head fell down, and he coughed up blood, the red liquid spreading across the floor. Naruto didn't care how much pain he was in now. He needed to get out. And so he struggled, the light spears further searing his flesh as he struggled in them. "Hang on, Issei," he cried, his voice cracking from his own painful experience. "I'm going to get you out of there. Just hang on." Yuma no Rainier, as she had insisted was her name, smiled mockingly at him. "That's right, Naruto, keep struggling. It's so much fun to watch." She looked at Issei and then turned back to him with a small sneer on her face. "Actually, Naruto, remember how I never gave you a full answer to why we kidnapped you too? Well, why don't I use Issei to show you?" She then thrust her hand towards Issei's heart, stopping about an inch away from it as a green light appeared between his chest and her hand. A runic-looking circle under the platform began to light up as Issei's head burst up and he screamed in agony. "Stop it!" Naruto shouted out in rage as he felt his body become hot, as though it were beginning to release the mystic energy he had managed to tap into all over his body. "Naruto, this is it," shouted the cruel-sounding voice. "We've almost managed to unlock all of your magical ability. Just hang on for a little while longer." "Hurry," the blonde shouted in his mind, not even caring if they were figments of his imagination anymore. It gave him something to hold on to, something to allow him to hope that they could get out of this. "Issei won't survive much longer. Please hurry it up. We're going as fast as we can, brat. Give us a bit." "I don't have a bit," he returned in rage, finally feeling his body gain an overwhelming amount of magical power. His problem right now is that he didn't know how to break the light spears and he didn't have time to experiment. He just had to go with the flow for now and try anything he could. He channeled magical energy to his hand again and began to feel the spear of light waver in its form. "Come on, come on, come on," he chanted to himself as though it were a mantra and began to feel the spear waver in strength. "Naruto," he heard someone weakly call to him. He looked up to see Issei, looking down at him with sad eyes as the green light pooling in his captor's fingers seemed to intensify. "Naruto, I don't think I'm going to make it." "Don't say that," Naruto shouted angrily at him, tears starting to stream down his eyes. "Don't say that, you damn perv. Remember, I said I'd get you out of there, and you know me, Issei. I don't go back on my word. Just hang on a little bit longer, I'll be right there. I promise." He heard Reina laugh, causing him to get angrier. "That's right, Naruto," she sadistically purred. "Lie to Issei. Make him feel better knowing that you're going to come and save him from me. I'm sure he can feel it, the life draining right out of him. Tell him that you'll come and save him even though he already knows that he is going to die." Suddenly, Rainier felt something wet on her cheek and scraped of what it was with her hand. It was blood. She looked back toward Issei and saw him with blood dripping from his mouth. "You little..." "Shut up, Rainier," he said fiercely, her name almost spat out like it was a bad taste in his mouth. "Can't you see that the men are trying to talk while you're spewing your stupid monologue?" He looked back toward his struggling friend, ignoring the fact that Rainier had increased the intensity of what she was doing. "Hey Naruto, listen to me, I need you to do something for me when you get out of here." "Shut up, Issei," shouted Naruto, the tears still flowing as he continued to pump energy through his hand. "We're going to get out of here together. You can do whatever you wanted me to when we get out of here. I'll even do whatever it is you want this time," he cried desperately. "You want me to spy on the girls' kendo team with you, Matsuda, and Motohama? I'll gladly do so. You want me to help you pick up a real girlfriend? I'll be the first to help you, and I'll even try and be your wingman even though I don't know how. You want me to help you build an actual harem and make it fucking legal? I'll not only help you collect the girls, but I'll run for prime minister and make that the first thing on my agenda. You better not give up though, cause I'm gonna get you out of here." "Naruto, listen to me," Issei cried out, not from pain but to get Naruto to listen. "I want you to do this for me. Do you hear me?" "Yeah," the blonde cried softly to himself, finally feeling as though he were about to break the first spear. "I hear you loud and clear." "Good, cause I got 3 things to tell you that you better do. The first one is to stop using your goddamned head so much. If there was one thing that always annoyed me about you, it was that you thought with your head instead of with your heart and your guts. Stop over-relying on that damned noggin of yours all the time. It's made you so paranoid, and it's partially why people don't want to be around you. Don't listen to what those damned voices in your head say unless it's something helpful or about how a girl has a nice pair of breasts. You got me?" Naruto nodded his head slightly. "Yeah, I got you," he shouted as he finally, after fiddling around with it a little more, managed to break the light spear that held down his left hand. "I hear you loud and clear. I'll start thinking with my heart and my guts a little more as soon as I get us both out of here. You can count on that." Ignoring the fact that he was just barely able to feel his hand move, Naruto pulled it off the ground and used it to grip the other light spear's shaft, ignoring the tears of pain. "Second thing," Issei continued, Ignoring the last thing Naruto had said, I want you to trust people more often. I admit, I might have been wrong this time about this person, but you really do need to trust people more. Go make more friends and don't sit there moping about the one you lost. You need to go out and get some new experiences. Stop living life in that comfortable box of yours and meet some new fucking people already. I hear you loud and clear, Issei, Naruto said, and he continued to pull on the spear with his hand to no avail, and tried channeling magic to his left hand to disrupt the spear's flow. Don't worry, I hear you loud and clear. Start trusting people more. Yup. I got that sealed up in my head for when you and I go to the park tomorrow. We can invite Matsuda and Motohama. Hell, maybe I'll even invite Sona and Tsubaki. They'll probably both say no, but I will have at least tried, you know. And finally Naruto, and this is the most important one, so pay attention. I'm listening, Issei, just keep talking, okay, Naruto cried, the tears coming down and hitting the light spear creating a sizzling sound. Just hang on. I'm coming, you bastard, so don't die on me just yet. I'm leaving you my dream, Naruto, Issei shouted, tears too streaming down his face. I want you to get out of here and I want you to become the king of harems in my place. No way, that title is meant for you and you only. Remember, I'm your faithful servant. I'm supposed to help you collect the girls and make the damn thing. You even promised me you would grace me with my own, remember? You can't die because you'll break the promise, you know. That's why I'm leaving you my dream, Naruto. I want you to do it in my place. Become the king of harems so I can look down from wherever the hell I am, laugh to the guy next to me, and say, you see that guy down there with all the women? I taught him everything he knows. That man is surrounded by beautiful ladies because of me. Do you hear me? No, that one I can't do, shouted Naruto. I have nowhere near your skill set to do it. I need someone to guide me. To show me the way so that I can build one, you know. I can't do it without my best friend. So that's why you need to live. You can do it without me, Naruto, Issei stated like it was a fact. You'll do just fine. Now promise me that you'll do it. Naruto cried. Yes, I'll do it, he shouted. I'll do as you ask of me. Just hang on. I've almost got it. It was true, the spear just needed a little bit more of a push and a tug, and he would have it out. Just hang on until then. Feeling despite, he called out into his mind. Hey voices, whatever the hell you are. You said you were almost done before. So where the fuck is that power surge? Come on. Just need another minute, shouted the prideful voice through what sounded like grit teeth. I don't have another fucking. Naruto, Issei shouted out, regaining his attention as the light in Rainer's palm seemed almost to be bursting and the circle below grew brighter. One last thing. His breathing began to get heavy, and life slowly drained from his face. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for standing by me whenever I did something stupid. Thanks for helping me get into Ko so I could live out my dreams if only for a little bit. Thank you for always being by my side when I needed a helping hand, even in the times I didn't deserve it. Just thank you so much for everything. There was a sudden flash of light as the glow in Rainer's hand disappeared, and in its place was a red gauntlet with a green gem in the center of the hand. The gauntlet looked scaled, almost like that of a dragon's claw. Rainer looked at the gauntlet in her hand and sneered in distaste. It's just a crummy, twice critical, even if it looks slightly different than the norm. She then stared at Issei with a sour look on her face. And here I was hoping the time I put in wouldn't have gone to waste. Pity. Issei, however, continued to stare at Naruto, the light leaving his eyes. Naruto, he gasped. Thank you for everything. His face finally turned corpse pale and his once vibrant eyes diminished in color. Now get out of here and live live for both of us. He continued gasping. Live for both of us, brother. And with that, Issei Hayadu stopped gasping and his head fell forward, his chest no longer rising. Naruto stared at Issei's prone form, his mouth opened in shock. The spear that he had once been trying to pull out went unignored, tears still falling from the blonde's eyes and sizzling on it as they hit. At this moment he felt no pain. He felt now sadness. He felt nothing whatsoever. He just continued to stare at his friend no brother's prone form as it just continued to stay in place. Unmoving, no signs of life to speak of at all. The blonde felt like he had every time he woke up in the morning every day for as long as he could remember. He felt numb. Inside and out. It was heart-wrenching. Oh, for Lord's sake, said Rainer as she looked at Naruto's still form. Get over it, boy. He was just a worthless pervert anyway. There was nothing special about him. He was a meaningless existence. Naruto felt something in him snap, not just from anger, but as though he had been given new power to work with. I'm sorry, Naruto, said the passive-sounding voice, full of regret. We couldn't unleash your power in time. I'm sorry. The words never reached his ears. He could not take it. These bastards. He gripped his one movable hand. These bastards had killed his brother. These bastards killed his brother. They killed Issei. Suddenly, a well of magical power was felt all over the room as the fallen angels and remaining priests looked toward Naruto in shock. The power was literally rolling off him in waves as an ethereal blue light burst from him and into the room. His power continued to grow until the sheer force of it began to eclipse that of the Fallens as a whole. Rainier shouted middled. What is this? The sheer power of this human, it shouldn't be possible for someone who just awakened to their abilities. Rainier grunted, though the fear on her face was clearly visible. I don't know. He had power, but I didn't think there was that much power in him. This is clearly Dominion-class angel in power. He wasn't supposed to have this much. With her free hand she motioned the priests toward Naruto's form. Don't just stand there, you idiots. Kill him. Upon her orders, all of the priests removed a small holster from under their cloaks and ignited swords of white light. They charged toward the boy, intending to kill him with a thrust of their swords. Rainier and her fellow fallen too prepared their own light spears and fired them towards the blonde. Just as all attacks were about to reach his person, they heard him roar to the heavens, just die, you bastards. All of a sudden, his power exploded outward and the world disappeared in white light. And thus the world changed once more, for better or for worse. Releasing a large pent-up amount of energy with the explosive force of a small bomb blast was something that Naruto decided he would never do again if he could avoid it. From the sound of things, it had seemed to work, but it tended to leave you with a pained impression due to the amount of agony you were in when you next woke up. It almost felt as though his skin was trying to burn off his body from the inside out, his blood boiling inside his veins and his bones feeling almost as though they had been cracked in certain places. No, Naruto decided if the worst ever came to worst, he would not be using his body as some kind of thermonuclear device ever again. He would rather avoid the pain if he could. He could say the same thing now, in which, after suddenly opening his eyes and feeling his senses all come back to him at once, he let out a sharp, agonizing scream in from his incredibly dry throat. As he howled, he felt the back of his throat crack almost as though it were glass. He managed to mentally snort to himself over the pain that flooded the various receptors in his body. Yup, he thought to himself dryly, eyes still closed and ears ringing. Who would have thought turning your body into a makeshift bomb would leave you so parched? He heard a snort from within his head. I could have told you that much, the cruel-sounding voice, one of the many that occupied his head, said in an almost melancholic manner. I thought you were supposed to be smart. Last I checked, blowing yourself and everything around you to kingdom come did not fall under the quantifiably smart category. Give the kid a break, bro, shouted the energetic voice, only furthering the growing headache the blonde seemed to be developing. Did they not know the meaning of indoor voices? Or would the term in-head voices be more apt for their situation? At the moment, with his entire body in pain, in various ways he had never even imagined before, he found himself unable to give a flying fuck about the thought. I mean, seriously, he was going to be on the incredibly unlucky end of several different sharp and pointy light objects. With the amount of knowledge both we and he have, we were just really lucky he did go boom, you know? Wait a second, the small rational part of Naruto's brain processed. Do you mean to tell me that you morons went messing with a power that you guys don't even understand yet? Are you serious? What if the situation had gotten worse? To be fair, tried a diplomatic voice, you only did explode. No harm done, right? No harm done except for the fact that I exploded. Are you mad? No, that's me, said a sadistic-sounding voice, the one that usually taunted him. Shut up, Shikaku, shouted all of the other voices in his head, causing him to groan hoarsely at the combined shouting and overall pain flowing through his body. Great, he thought to himself in annoyance as he continued to attempt to open his eyes to no avail. Wonderful. The voices in my head have decided to give each other names. Just freaking great. He tried to move anything he could but could only make his toes and fingers curl lightly, something which almost put him in a large amount of agony just to do so. Well, this couldn't get any worse. Any worse besides you friend being dead, and you being in large amount of pain, once again commented the voice whom everyone had called Shikaku. Shikaku, once again shouted the other voices in unison, only for the blonde to ignore their squabbling them in favor of remembering the words that the voice had just uttered. Friend dead? Him exploding? His friend was dead? He exploded because his friend was dead? Issei was dead and he exploded? Issei was dead? Issei was dead. The words took a while to finally make sense to him, honestly believing that they would never be uttered in the same sentence. And yet they were there, clear as day. No, Naruto thought desperately. Issei couldn't be dead. He was only knocked out when Yuma Rainier pulled that red gauntlet thing from his chest. He was just knocked out. That had to be it. Naruto, tried the diplomatic voice, I don't think that's. "Stop," commanded the cruel voice, sounding almost as though it pitied him. "Just give him this much for a little while." Why would the stupid voice in his head pity him? It was obvious that Issei was alive. He had to be alive. There was no way his buddy could die in such a cool manner with ending speech and all. It just was not supposed to happen. His best friend was a pervert. He did not get to go out in a manner that was becoming of a hero from some manga. That was just not Issei's thing. He was supposed to be that invincible comedy relief character, that guy that always made you laugh with his crazy antics before being comically punched in the face and sent flying only to pop up couple seconds later like nothing happened to him. So Issei couldn't be dead. Issei did not get to die. Naruto ignored the pain in his body as he attempted to stand, trying to force himself up. He had to get up. He had to check on Issei. He had to make sure his friend was okay. As he forced himself to activate his senses, Naruto began to smell the thick scent of smoke enter his nostrils, filling senses with a shuddering feeling. He steadied himself and took a deep breath, only to regret his folly as he felt the smoke enter his lungs and send him into a fit of coughing. He could feel wisps of some run through his fingers and he continued to inhale lightly, trying to take in the least amount of smoke possible into his body. He opened his eyes and felt them begin to burn as the inky black air filled his vision. Just how much damage had he caused? Apparently a lot. For one thing, the room was no longer a room as much as it was just a giant well-built hole in the ground. The stone roof of the room had been completely obliterated, the only thing still standing barely being the top of the building that was currently on fire. That too had a giant hole in the flaming roof, smoke rising out of it covering most of the visage of the sky. He could feel wind blow down through the hole though, fanning the flames in the chamber and on the roof. He could feel the very wind rustle against his skin, and in a way, despite having felt it a million times before now, he felt something new about it. It felt different, almost foreign now, as though he had never knew what it truly felt like before. This new feeling got the blood pumping. It made him, despite the situation, slightly excited. He used that excitement, that new flow of energy, to his advantage. He ignored the open wounds on his hand and rubbed them against the hard floor as he pushed himself up into a sitting-up position. His back was luckily okay, it seems, as that was probably the only part of his body not in a pain of some kind. He did a once-over of himself, moving his sore arms around to get a feel for them, and inspected his right hand rather closely. It appeared to have a long wide gash that seemed to have crusted over to heal. His left hand did not seem to suffer any damage either. He then ran his free hand along his head, feeling for the gash that was once there, dripping blood as he fought his way through the leagues of priests that had stood before him and his target. After rubbing his head, he noticed that the gash too seemed to have disappeared almost miraculously. It was rather thin, but there still should have been a line of some kind that had scabbed over, shouldn't there? "That was us, kid," chimed the proud-sounding voice from his mind. "We directed your power all over your body and managed to heal it quite extensively. Believe it or not, you were quite the mess before you woke up. Broken bones, gashes of different kinds and sizes all over your body, trauma to the head, and all sorts of other nice medical problems for you. Using some of your power, we kind of managed to, how you say, fixed you up like magic." "You're telling me you fixed me up with magic," Naruto intoned vocally, almost as though he were in disbelief. "Magic was just a myth, something you told to kids in fairy tales. It wasn't supposed to be real. If you remember, those fallen angel guys weren't supposed to be real either, yet here we are," remarked the cruel-sounding voice sarcastically. "Listen, I don't know, nor do I care if you think this is real at the moment. In case you have not noticed, you are in the middle of, judging by the smoke, some shithole that is burning. Now I don't know about you, but for those who don't know what it does, fire plus flesh equals you on fire, and in immense amounts of pain. So with that in mind, can we please focus on getting out of here?" Naruto might have made a snarky reply to the voice, but realized for the most part it was correct. The situation that they were in did not speak well for them. Pushing his arms up at his sides, the blonde got up shakily, his legs making wobbling motions as he slowly stood. Sliding his leg up against the ground a few times to make sure it wouldn't give him any problems, Naruto slowly walked forward into the thick smoke that covered the lower toward the ground even in the open area. It was going to be tough to see, it seemed. Naruto suddenly snapped his head up in realization as he felt his hand up to his head and felt the aviator goggles Issei had given him still in place. He quickly pulled them down over his eyes and noticed that luckily no cracks had formed on them at all, making him silently praise himself for always wearing his 13th birthday gift from his friend. Ever since he was 7, Naruto had wanted a pair all his own. He had seen them on some racing anime that had been in reruns at the time and had immediately fallen in love with the idea of having a pair all his own. He thought they looked really cool and that if he had a set he would be, as he put it at the time, super prepared for any bad guy that came my way. Looking back at the time, Issei had thought he was crazy, and to be honest, Naruto had never thought he would get a pair, especially since it was the one gift for any event, be it birthday or Christmas, that his mother refused to get him. The one time his father had tried, his mother had almost forced him to sleep on the couch until he relented. Finally, when he was 13 and asked for what he would like for a gift that year, he told his mother something different, finally realizing he would never get a pair. It wasn't until Issei had come over later that day with a small bag in hand that Naruto had received his wish. It was a blue set of goggles with dark blue lensing. At the time they had looked extremely familiar to the point he couldn't place them, but regardless they made him incredibly happy until Issei had said that Naruto could now peep on women without them suspecting a thing because they wouldn't be able to see his eyes. Even though he didn't want them for that reason, Naruto laughed all the same. Since then he always had them with him wherever he went, even going as far to wear them at formal functions. The only time he ever took them off was to go to sleep. And why would he take them off? In middle school the teachers, despite following the code, honestly didn't care that he wore them. Hell, sometimes when he couldn't find a good spot he wore them to dim the light when he would take a nap, cause why not? Though while he may have used them for those things, he always had them with him as an assurance, a just in case if he needed them. He was happy he had them with him now of all times, especially since it seemed like he was right about needing them in case of danger. With them pulled over his eyes, Naruto no longer felt his eyes water from the smoke and was able to peer through it rather clearly. The men in the priestly-looking garb who had attacked him were scattered all over the place, all of them in various states of disarray. Some were even incredibly gory sights to behold. There were several that had a few of the beams supporting whatever was above them come down and fall on top of them, squishing their bodies to the ground. There were 2 or 3 impaled with the rods that were once holding candles. The candles had apparently also fallen on some of the bodies and were now charring their corpses with the flames that lit the robes of their god. Looking upon the sight, he felt his stomach churn at the unfamiliar visage. He had seen such a scene looking like this in a game once. The character walked through a sea of bodies in a room searching for a lost item, and when he found it the bodies got up, their lanky and lifeless-looking forms moving toward the character who now had to fight his way through. The game did not do such a scene justice, and even if it did he had his doubts if these bodies would be getting up anytime soon. He felt numb, and it was not the normal type that he typically felt. No, this was a new sensation that he felt upon staring at the scattered bodies of the room. These men had tried to kill him, yet he suddenly found himself with the realization that instead he had become their executioner, his hands stained with their blood. It was a feeling that he didn't quite think he would ever get used to and was more than likely thankful for the fact. These were men who more than likely had friends, loved ones of some kind, even if they did not plan on returning to them in this life. They probably had somebody who cared for them. Does it matter? A voice in the back of his mind, much like his own, whispered. These men were trying to kill you. No, they were going to kill you. That man with the sword whose head you blew off, he was going to kill you too. And they hurt our precious friend Issei. It was only fair that you blew them up before they could hurt you like they did him. Who cares whether or not it was right, it was you or them. In that moment, despite how cruel the thought was, he knew that the thought process was correct. It was either him or them, and quite frankly at this moment his life sounded much more preferable to the alternative. Despite how horrible what he had done was, he recognized he could throw up later after he had gotten him and Issei out of here. At least then he wouldn't be in an area that smelled of fresh burning corpses, which was probably his least favorite smell of all time now, not that it shouldn't have been in the first place either. Deciding he wasted enough time, Naruto scanned over the area that he currently occupied, looking for his friend. He found just what he was looking for next to the body of the one who had done this to them in the first place, and the weird gauntlet she had taken from Issei's chest cavity. His friend lay there, still attached to the cross, with his face to the floor. Naruto slowly made his way over to Issei's position, his eyes never once leaving his friend's prone form. That had almost cost him a couple of times as debris from the building toppled down on top around them. He had almost been hit by a falling beam once, its flaming visage hitting the stone floor in front of him with a sharp crack echoing throughout the former underground chamber. He needed to hurry. It was clear that this building was going to be falling on top of itself soon. Finally reaching Issei, grabbed the cross with all of his might and flipped it over. It might have just been the adrenaline talking, but right now he felt so much stronger physically than he ever had before. It was amazing. It was exciting. It was completely new. The blonde smiled to himself sardonically as he worked on removing the straps tying Issei to the cross. The wish he had made every morning for something different to happen to him, that feeling of excitement at something new or maybe gaining something he had been missing. Apparently some higher power had decided to grant him this wish in the most horrifying of ways. After all, he had decided suddenly, the divine must have been dicks like that. It would explain so much. The goggle-covered blonde finally finished with the straps holding down the brown-haired boy and quickly pulled him off. Despite having gone through an explosion and subsequent fire, Issei was almost remarkably unscathed with the exception of some tears on his blazer and undershirt that exposed his chest area slightly. He wished his clothes had come out as fine too, but his own shirt was ripped all over and his pants were in tatters along the legs. The only good thing he could say is that he had a whole closet full of the same clothes, so he at least did not have to worry about immediate repairs. The blonde moved his and stared at his friend's face, the lifeless-looking eyes staring right back at him, no emotion whatsoever. It was in this moment that Naruto had come to the startling revelation that the voice Shikaka had told him earlier. Issei was dead. Issei was dead, and he would not be coming back. The thoughts stood in the forefront of his mind, but even as he admitted them to himself, he still found that he was unable to accept the fact. There had to be something that he could do. He couldn't just let Issei die like this. There had to be a way to get him back. And then he turned his gaze to the side, once again taking in the form of the one who did this to them, or more specifically what she still held in her hand. The red gauntlet that looked like a dragon's hand. It sat there with her resting her grubby little fingers all over it. Yes, the thing that she has removed from Issei's chest. That had to be the key. When she took that thing from Issei, he immediately dropped his head and entered his current state more likely than not. Whatever that thing was, more likely than not had something to do with his current state of being. Maybe if he found a way to reverse the spell, he could put it back in his chest and get Issei back. It had to be the only way. But he couldn't do it here. Not with the building burning and looking like it was going to fall down at any second. Naruto pulled his friends prone from the cross and crouched down. He wrapped Issei's hands around his neck, his chest facing toward his back, and then grabbed his legs, taking them with him as he stood up. He felt himself lose balance a little and leaned forward a little bit to counter. He knew if Issei were there to see him right now, he would be bloody cursing at him for holding him like that. He had after all loudly proclaimed to him and the rest of the world that only women were allowed to touch him, and that anything else was blasphemous to him. Unfortunately, my friend, it seems that you'll have to just accept that I did it for today and complain about it all you want another day, he thought to himself. After making sure Issei was completely secure on his back and that he could handle the weight, Naruto slowly made his way over to the form of their captor. As he made his way over, he could see the other winged beings who had attacked them. They were scattered about in various positions, though they did not look too damaged. The short blonde girl called Middle situated comfortably in a wall, her body being firmly locked in place due to being lodged inside the wall itself. Her head had fallen forward, her eyes shadowed by her hair. The only male, Donna, lay on the ground with his hands sprawled outward and his legs stuck under fallen piles of wood. As he got closer to Rainier, he noticed Caliwarner right near her on the right, her head bloody and her body covered in bruises. It seems like she honestly took the worst of it. Finally reaching the prone black-haired women, Naruto was almost half tempted to check her pulse, to make sure that she was dead. To make sure that she could never do this again to anyone. Shoring up his grip on Issei, he let go of one of his legs and brushed his hand along her neck, trying to find a vein to check for a pulse. Finally finding a place he could check, he pushed his finger against it. He felt no pulse. He let out a breath he hadn't realized that he had been holding, and for a second found himself contemplating the fact that he had sighed in relief that a person was dead. It would have probably worried him if it weren't for the fact he was sure that she was finally repaid all the bad karma that she must have collected over the years. From the sound of things, she had performed similar rituals before, knowing all the right buttons to press to mess with a person's head. She was an expert, probably having done it many times before. Thinking it over, he suddenly didn't feel any remorse at all. Moving his hand from her neck to her hands, he gripped the edge of the smooth red metal of the armored hand, pulling it quickly from her grip. Pulling it up towards him, he examined the item within his grasp. It was definitely a gauntlet, that much anyone could identify looking at it from afar. What people would see up close, though, was that it was scaled like one would imagine a dragon's would be. It certainly fit with the claw-looking fingers that made up the armored piece's hand. At the center of palm area was a bright green jewel, light glinting off it almost like it was an emerald in reflective light. The jewel itself on the inside looked murky. All of a sudden the jeweled center glowed lightly, and he almost ended up dropping it from surprise. This thing was inside Issei? This powerful artifact? He could tell it was. His senses were naturally screaming at him that this thing was dangerous. This dangerous thing was inside Issei? How the hell did that happen? Did his friend unknowingly make a pact with the devil or something? Whatever it was, though, he knew two things. One thing would be was that this thing was tied to the life of his friend. If he didn't take it with him, Issei had no hope at all. The other thing, he noted cynically, that even if he hadn't needed it and left it here, then if it fell into the wrong hands, then something very bad would happen. Of that much he was sure. Rewrapping his hand around his friend's leg with the gauntlet secured, Naruto looked around the room for a way to escape. Naruto looked around the room and saw a stone staircase that seemed to head up into the main building above them. It will literally be like walking from the frying pan and into the fire, rang the sadistic-sounding voice of Shikaku in his ear with a maniacal-sounding laugh. Ignoring his horrible joking aside, he is right, commented the sensual voice wryly. You will literally be walking from the slightly burning room below into the really burning building. That is not fair odds. Ignoring the fact that the schizophrenic voices were now giving him advice, he sighed to himself. I know that, but quite frankly it is the only way out of here. It's either sit down here and wait for the building to collapse on top of me or take my chances with the burning building above. Naruto cocked his head around the room and looked at how much he had ended up destroying. I think I will take my chances with the burning building, especially since I only ended up confirming Rainier was dead. Naruto once again made his way across the room, being careful to once again avoid the small fires around room. He heard a small creaking from above him and looked up. He saw another beam covered in orange flame once again fall of the same building and rushed forward toward the door. He wasn't going to make it. There was a fire in front of him, and if he went around he would not make it in time. And then he remembered the move he pulled off before against those priest guys when he jumped over their swords really high into the air. It was almost instinctual when he had done it. He silently hoped he could pull it off again as he adjusted the weight on his back and felt himself transfer his power to his feet. Trusting himself, he jumped, reaching high into the air. He could literally feel the flames licking the hells of his shoes and the heat of the falling hunk of wood coming close to crashing down on him. He just barely managed to land in the stairwell as the church's support beam hit the floor and shower of fiery mayhem. He would have whooped in joy had they not needed to get out of the burning building. That beam that fell down looked like the main support beam that was holding up the roof fully. He needed to get out of there and fast. Naruto quickly ran up the stone staircase as fast as he could. The run-up was agonizing and almost felt as though it were taking forever to reach up there, to the point where he almost tripped a couple of times. Finally Naruto made it to a wooden door that happened to be on fire. He was really starting to regret exploding right about now. Don't just stand there looking at the door like an idiot, shouted the proud voice from his mind. Kick it down. You realize you're telling me to kick down a door that is on fire, right? He asked hesitantly. Just do it. Alright, geez. I can't believe I just lost an argument with a hallucination. Naruto raised his left leg and kicked the door. It didn't budge. He kicked it again and managed to crack the burning door this time. Taking a deep breath and counting back from 3, Naruto kicked the door as hard as he could and almost tripped into the burning room. The entire room was basically on fire. The only place there wasn't a fire burning was in the big gaping hole in the center of the room. Even the altar he first saw coming out of the stairwell was on fire, a Bible book with open pages sitting upon it, and burning as well. He would have almost thought that it was some sort of anti-religious symbolism that he saw in a movie once if the situation were purposeful. A Bible, an altar, religious symbolism all around the room. At least he finally knew where he was. He was at that church at the edge of town, the one that had been abandoned for many years. The caretaker had supposedly died under mysterious circumstances, and the place had fallen into disrepair. Eventually, people just stopped coming altogether, and few people supposedly did go and ended up never coming out, creating a lot of ghost stories about the place. The Japanese, being rather superstitious by nature, saw that as a sign not to go near the place for the most part, and made sure to remind everyone of the fact when you suggested otherwise. It was rather genius of them to set up shop here, not that he thought about it. He did a quick scan of the room and quickly realized the only way out was that door across the giant hole. He felt his hope die a little inside as he realized the fact. That hole in the ground basically got rid of half of the building's floor. There was literally no way a normal human could jump across. Now that he thought about it though. I suppose this magic power thing means I'm not normal anyway, doesn't it? He thought doubtfully. Well, channeling magical power to his feet and using the energy as some sort of lift certainly helped him get over the fire and the sword-wielding priest, so why not? He decided at this moment he could not afford to play it safe, and if he was going to die might as well do it his own way. After moving in front of church altar and checking the overall distance, he began pumping the magical energy to his legs. He could feel it flowing through his legs, coursing through some coil almost like water going through a tube. He began pouring so much in his legs were literally starting to glow slightly, and he could feel the energy begin to bubble. Normally he might have panicked, especially the bubbling felt familiar to like that of when he released the magical explosion, but this time that's what he needed. It would not be a full body explosion but one he would release from his feet to use as propulsion he need to get across. Finally, he began his run and reaching the end released the burst from his feet as he jumped. The results were greatly in his favor. As he lifted off the ground in his jump, the expelled energy gave him quite the needed boost to what felt like flying over the chasm itself, or at least what he had assumed was flying. He finally came crashing to the ground on the other side and without rest sprinted forward, throwing his shoulder into a bum rush position as he charged the burning door. He felt the heat spread along what remained of his tattered jacket, screaming as he felt the flames sear his skin lightly while passing through the broken doorway. Even after he cleared the door, he still felt the immense heat behind him, and kept running all the way until he reached the forest itself. Only then did he allow himself to slow down lightly when he felt that they were safe. He finally strolled slowly into a slow jog in order to keep moving at a reasonable pace. And then he heard a giant explosion and turned around to see the church finally come toppling down in the distance. He felt himself stop to stare at the sight. The fact that it collapsed the way it did was sure to draw some attention. In that moment, he suddenly realized how suspicious it might look for him to be running around with the corpse of his currently dead friend on his back and a medieval-looking gauntlet in hand. He would end up looking like one of those occultists he had originally thought that the fallen angels had been. As he stared at the flames, though, he saw something that horrified him and caused him to take a step back. 4 figures rose out of the blaze and into the sky, the orange flames parting as though they were alive and heeding the command of something that was its better. 2 large black wings sat upon their backs, their figures highlighted by flames like some evil creature from his nightmares. He could literally feel their energy rolling off of them. They were alive, and that was not good for him at all. Suddenly, they scattered, with one of them flying over into his direction. He almost froze. Could they sense him? Could they feel his fear? He did not know and did honestly not want to take the chance. He dashed quickly to the side and dove in a thick pair of bushes, ignoring the pain of the needle-like leaves piercing his sides. He set Issei down next to him and waited a few seconds. Then he felt a great big burst of wind pass over him, and he sighed knowing that the fallen that had gone past had most likely left. The energy signature was faint and still moving away from his position. That was good. He could definitely work with that. The other 3 signatures also too were moving away rapidly from what he could feel. Wait, he suddenly thought in horror. He quickly began to count the number of signatures he felt on his left hand to make sure he wasn't imagining. 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 4 signatures, but that would mean that Rainer was alive. She couldn't be. He had felt her neck himself, and she didn't have a pulse. When you don't have a pulse, you're not supposed to get up and walk away from something like it was just a smack to the head. It was probably a healing spell that did it, offered a kind-sounding voice. If they have rituals to remove people's souls and weapons from them, then they more likely than not have some form of healing spell that can bring someone back from the dead. The blonde responded critically to the suggestion of the hallucination. I don't think it works like that. If they had a spell that could revive the dead, then why not revive the holders of these soul weapon things after you take them? Wouldn't that make more sense? That way they wouldn't need to cover up the fact they killed a person and the former holder could just go on thinking that it was a dream. So now that we've ruled out a spell that revives the dead, can we please suggest a more plausible theory, you messed up phantasms? Okay, then what about the fact that you maybe checked her pulse wrong, you dumbass? The formerly kind voice shouted at him, suddenly entering a whole different mood. It seemed like it must have really not liked being called a stupid phantasm. Though now that he thought about it clearly, the fact did make sense for the most part. He was never really trained to check a pulse. The most he knew about one was from when they studied biology, and from a few health classes where they had them take heart rates. He did okay at taking his own and checking his partner's, but he was certainly no medical professional. Screwing that up was definitely possible for him, especially since he didn't know how different the biology of a fallen angel and a human were. Realizing this, he began sweat internally. The chick who had just killed his friend, and whom was more likely than not looking to kill him now if she hadn't been trying hard enough before, was still freaking among the living. She was still walking around, flying around in this case, he guessed, but that wasn't the point. She had captured both him and Issei because he supposedly had something like Issei's red gauntlet thing inside him as well. Which meant that she probably still wanted it too. Shit, he cursed to himself and looked at his friend's lifeless body. He felt his eyes water, the stress of it all finally coming down on him now that the rush was gone. It's always you who gets us into trouble, you know that, he commented aloud, his voice cracking and his nose slowly moistening on the inside. Every single time you get us into trouble. When we were kids it was going on adventures. I almost miss when it was about adventure for you. At least then all that did was removing ourselves from the watchful eyes of our mothers to play dragon hunting in the forest, you know. He sniffled as he attempted to keep mucus from dripping out. Then when we were just stupid fucking preteens it suddenly became about girls, and you, for some goddamned reason, decided it would be a good idea to try and include me on your increasing levels of perversion by peeking on the middle school swim team with you. He laughed lightly despite the tears, recalling the event almost fondly. It was the just both of us at the time, and you tried to get me to join in your fun cause you didn't want me to be lonely. I was so thankful to hear you say that I joined you anyway, even if it went against everything Mom told me not to do. Funny thing is that I honestly think I enjoyed it a little, and thinking about it more I think you enjoyed it more than me because it was the first time you were able to do it without getting caught. The tears were freely falling now, cascading down his face and wetting the dry ground. He clenched his fists and his teeth, almost breaking open the scabbed overcut on his hand. And then when we got to high school, oh how much trouble you ended saddling me up with. He blew his nose and what remained of his sleeve, not caring how disgusting it was. You got us in so much trouble, and that was from me having to bust your butt out of getting your ass beat all the time. I seriously thought for the longest time that it was impossible to get an entire sex to hate you no matter how bad a pervert you were. You certainly managed to prove me wrong, especially when they started calling you the enemy of all women. He remembered the day almost fondly. He and Issei had never laughed so hard about the nickname he had been given. Instead of finding it annoying, the brown-haired boy had almost reveled in it. He said it just meant that he was getting to them, and that once they started thinking about him they would never be able to stop. He didn't have the heart to tell him that was not the intention, but he didn't have the heart to pop his friend's bubble despite the amount of fridge logic it contained. It was just too funny at the time, and the both of them laughed, and made jokes about the whole thing for hours. And then you just never stopped. For some reason, despite the fact that it was morally unethical, you didn't seem to actually even give a shit about that. You followed what your heart asked you to, and you never gave up on your dream, even going so far as to shout it to the heavens in front of people and defend your dream after people called you crazy for it. Naruto began wiping his eyes, trying to stop the tears and seemingly having enough. I may not have told you this all the time, hell I might have even called you crazy myself every once in a while, but I really admired your conviction to chase your dream. Your choice to go for it, grab it with both arms, and never let it go. You inspired me to try and do the same as soon as I found a dream of my own. Naruto banged his fist against the ground angrily and grabbed the giant red gauntlet, holding it tightly in his hand. And that's why I refuse to let you die just yet. You can't die now. You still have a dream to achieve. You're supposed to be the harem king, remember? He crawled closer to his friend's body and put the gauntlet on top of his chest, right in the area that Rainier had taken it from. And that's why you're going to take this damn thing back into your body and wake your stupid ass up. He began pushing the thick metal glove against his friend's chest, hoping for it to do something. Nothing happened at all. Not a single thing. No damned spark of green light or anything at all to show it was working. He pushed harder. As if that would do something, he thought cynically to himself with his eyes closed, tears leaking onto his friend's clothed chest and seeping into the cotton of the shirt itself. If that didn't work, then what would? And then he remembered his sudden magical abilities. Yes. That had to be the solution. Magic was what pulled the damned red artifact thing from his friend, so why not try and use it to put it back? It had to work. His abilities had worked for everything else from combat to using it to enhance his overall physical power, so why couldn't there be an application for this? The fallen angel did it, so why couldn't he? He began to build up magical power into his hand, gathering the energy in his palm. Maybe this would work if his thoughts conveyed what he wanted to do. In a few of the stories about magic he had read, most of them worked with a combination of will and having a specific thought or feeling to help shape the magic into what you wanted it to do. If he thought about it subconsciously, he had been thinking that he needed to escape and be stronger to fight when performing such tasks. So taking that theory, if he applied it to his current predicament, using his feelings of hope and his desire to put back the gauntlet and revive his friend, it might. I would not do that if I were you, a voice from below his hand called out. What the, he thought as he pulled his hands off to see the only thing there was the gauntlet. What was different about it was that the once murky-looking green gem in it was now glowing lightly with a yellow light. That was weird. That thing could have just... You were thinking something rude about me just now, weren't you? The voice said once again, this time with him noticing the gem of the gauntlet glowed slightly brighter with each word before diming. The gauntlet was talking. The gauntlet was talking. The gauntlet was talking. The gauntlet was... Yes, the voice once again interjected dryly. Please repeat that. The gauntlet is talking once again. I don't think those fallen angels who were chasing you could hear you all the way out in the city limits. Haven't you ever heard of keeping your inner thoughts to yourself? Naruto would have retorted had he not still been in shock over the fact that he had repeated what he had been thinking in his head out loud, and due to the fact that the gauntlet was still freaking talking. Seriously? What kind of sick twist of fate was it that the damned object could talk? Then again, who thought that fallen angels and magic existed? Technically, by going with what he already knew, he should not have been shocked about this, but still. So do you have a name, or are you going to sit there gapping at me in my former container? Naruto decided at this point it was just better to go with the flow and ignore the comment. Sorry, he apologized, looking at its jewel and wiped his eyes once again to dry them. It's just that this has been a very stressful day. Yes, I can tell, the gauntlet commented morosely, almost as though it were sad. I apologize for what happened to your friend. It is always said to see one of my potential partners fall before they are even given the chance to find out about me. It does not happen often, but it has before. But you were inside of him, the blonde shouted at it. Surely he can still be saved if I get you back into him somehow, right? It seems that you do not understand the situation, young man, the gauntlet said tiredly, as though he had gone through the same routine over and over. This guy, the one who had the gauntlet placed in him by the sacred gear system, is not getting back up. Once I am removed or the user is killed, it is over. There is no how would you humans say it get out of jail free card because it doesn't exist. The only way this kid is getting revived is if you find a devil to bring him back with one of their evil pieces, and to be fair, without me and this kid he isn't worth much. Naruto grit his teeth in anger. Shut up, you stupid hunk of scrap metal, he shouted. What would you know about how much Issei is worth? He's my friend. He's worth plenty to me. How dare this stupid thing say that Issei wasn't worth anything while sitting on his friend's chest? And the whole Issei wasn't worth much without him thing? It was just a gauntlet. I bet it was a cool looking gauntlet, but still it was just a gauntlet. What made it worth so special? Be that as it may, that does not mean a devil will revive him, replied the gauntlet, the jewel now glowing furiously as though it were mad. If I had to estimate his worth to a devil right now, it would be worth one pawn piece, and even then, from what I could tell in your limited interaction with him as I was being pulled from his soul, he does not have any special skills that would be worth being reincarnated by a devil. Shut up, returned Naruto. I don't care if he doesn't have any special skills. He may be a pervert, but he is still my best friend, and I'm not going to let him die if I could help it. I admire your conviction, but I have been watching you since you picked me up, and believe me, kid, if I had not interrupted what you were doing, you would have destroyed my former host's body completely, the object admitted. The blonde froze at the words. I could have destroyed Issei's body, he asked himself, his head falling to stare at the ground as tears not of sadness but of desperate frustration began to fall once again. There was no way. The theory he had come up with applied had made sense so far in application. How could he destroy Issei's body then? As if seeing the boy's expression, the gauntlet continued with its explanation. I must admit it, you have a rather impressive aptitude for magic and have an incredible amount for a beginner, it complimented. I have never seen anyone learn to enhance their body with magic right out of the gate, and that is a rather impressive feat in of itself. However, you have neither the experience, control, nor the means at this point to control a healing spell of even minor significance. What you just would have done was blow your friend's body to kingdom come, something I think you would rather avoid if you could. Then what am I supposed to do? Naruto shouted at it in desperation. There has to be something I can do. Please, you seem to know a lot, so tell me something, anything. I'll do whatever I have to just help me save my friend. He heard the gauntlet sigh in what sounded like pity. I'm sorry, but there is just nothing we can do at this moment, it said. Your friend is gone. I'm sorry, but you must accept that. As Naruto took in the words, his stomach churned as his tears never seemed to stop. This is it, he asked to himself quietly as he stared down at his fist buried in the dirt. Is this really all I could do for him? He cracked a small watery smile. Am I really this useless that I cannot save my own friend? I'm sorry, Naruto, the deeply guttural-sounding voice apologized to him. It was almost ironic, he noted, that a voice that sounds so cruel is actually being nice. We tried to tell you in the church, but you just did not seem to want to listen to us. I'm truly sorry that it ended up like this. Even my hallucinations knew that it was hopeless before I did, he cried internally. If the voices inside his head knew all about this before he did, then what did that mean for him? That he had unknowingly accepted that it was useless, and that all of this desperate fighting was just some act he had subconsciously put up to protect himself? Was he really the delusional that he needed to fool himself into trying so hard? Hey, snap out of it, kid, the gauntlet shouted, getting his attention. Look, from what I see he was important to you, and once again I'm sorry, but we need to get out of here before. Well, commented a voice from above him offhandedly, one that Naruto thoroughly recognized, and clenched his dirt-coated fists at his suave-sounding voice. It seems like you had not escaped as far as Rainier originally thought. To think you were hiding here and so close to the church as well, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I passed over this spot without sensing you. You really need to get a control on your emotions though, because it seems your magic fluctuates as a result of them. Naruto slowly stood up and turned around, his blue eyes glaring at the floating form of the black-haired fallen angel Donna. The angel, unlike when he had left him in the blazing church, seemed to be uninjured. Even the scorch marks that stained his trench coat and shirt were no longer visible. In fact, the ensemble looked like it just got back from a dry cleaner's and was as good as new. The various wounds that had also marred his body too were gone and left smooth, unblemished skin in their place. It was like he had never been in the burning church in the first place. As if sensing his thoughts, the biblical being just chuckled at his glare. You are probably wondering how I'm alive, aren't you? He asked in a mirthfully mocking tone, a small sadistic gleam entering his eyes. Well, you see, unlike you humans, we fallen are much more resilient when it comes to pain. While I must admit your explosion was unexpected, it was most certainly not something we could not handle getting back up from. As for why I'm fully healed and my clothes look just perfect, well, magic. Naruto's glare intensified. This guy thing, whatever the hell it was mocking him, and he was really not in the mood to deal with it. Especially since this guy right here was one of the people who killed Issei. The blonde could feel his magic burst forth like a wave, as if answering his anger with the overwhelming force he desired. His whole body began to glow, and his light blue magical energy swirled around him like a small hurricane. With this power he could defend himself. With this power he could fight the damned creature in front of him. With this power he could stop this fallen and make sure he never got back up again, no matter how many times he healed his wounds.